Good evening, everybody. Hello and welcome along to the second of our Euro 2020 podcast. The first one, of course, was 2 weeks ago where we were previewing the group stages and saying our predictions, which some we don't want to probably reveal given how bad some of them were and how maybe some of them were quite good. So we'll keep that later on in the show. I'm your host, Matt Howes, and of course I've got our commentators who have been doing various games throughout these European Championships so far in the 13 days that the competition has been a part of our sort of knowledge. Of course, we've covered most of the games on the commentary hub throughout the group stages. Of course, we say goodbye to Turkey, Finland, Russia, Scotland, Poland, Slovakia and Hungary. 8 have fallen out of 24, 16 remain now, and it does feel like the tournament really is now starting to click into gear as we review the group stages and we have a look at the round of 16 games and what potentially lies further on in the tournament. And of course, we will kick things right off. And of course, if you are watching, we're on various different channels. We're on JB Sports, the Commentary Hub 2, and the Commentary Hub, our main YouTube channel. Of course, we're also on Periscope. We're on Mike Arneman's YouTube channel, the guy just above me in the screen. Commentary Live on Twitch, and Russ Vernon's very own Twitch channel as well, the man in the top left corner, of course. Now, this might be the first time you've actually seen all of our commentators and experts, and believe me, they do look a lot better in person, so don't be afraid by their looks at all, including mine and our voices, of course. We do sound a lot different.
I've got a few wrinkles.
We haven't got our good faces on, have we? We probably did need an extra hour in makeup, shall we say. Let's kick things off. As they say, let's get the opinion of Barry Swain first. Barry, the group stages are over. Obviously, we did see some cracking games towards the latter end stages of the tournament. We saw some really thrilling games, especially last night with Portugal, France, Germany and Hungary playing out those 2-2 draws in Munich and Budapest, respectively. Has it been a good tournament for you so far? Have you been surprised by it at all? Or have you kind of expected this level of competition?
Pleasantly surprised. There's been some good football. There's not been too many bad games. You know, there's been okay games in amongst it, but we've been entertained, haven't we? Not too many 0-0 draws. Not too many shocks. You know, Spain were skating on thin ice, and so were Portugal at one stage late in match day 3, but they both survived and they've gone through. So all the big guns are in there. It's a bit top heavy on one side, that draw. I'm sure we'll come to that later. But in terms of the group stages, been pleasantly surprised. There's been no one outstanding that you would say, wow, they're the team to beat. You know, we've got our Belgiums, our Italies and our Frances that everyone's purring about. But they've got weak spots. Everyone's got a weak spot. And I think it's still a very open tournament. And I think there's loads of drama to look forward to in the next couple of weeks.
Yes, absolutely. We do hope that there is as much drama as what we did see at some aspects of the group stages. Of course, we've got a new person who's part of the channel in Luke Turton, who is a Nottingham Forest fan. Welcome to the channel, Luke, and obviously good evening to you and people listening. From a distance, what have you made of the European Championships? Have you got something to add to what Barry sort of said, or is it pretty much a sort of echoing what he's actually managed to say?
Yeah, I think I'd echo what he said, to be honest. It's not had many 0-0s, and you know the big sides have entertained in some games, but in other games they've probably looked poor. I mean, Germany's had their moments, France have had their moments, Portugal have definitely had their moments, but again, Italy I think have been the most consistent with Belgium and winning most of their games. So I think it's all to play for in the round of 16.
Absolutely is, of course. We will touch on the round of 16 games later on and which commentators are doing what games, of course, and who plays on what day. Of course, it is from Saturday to Tuesday, so there's at least 2 games a day for you to enjoy in that time. Let's review the group stages then. Let's start with Group A, of course. It finished in this order. Italy on 9 points. Wales was second with 4. Switzerland had 4 and Turkey were dead last on 0. I think a lot of people had Turkey to be the dark horses in that group. How well that turned out. I'm not going to name names who predicted them to do well, so I'll leave them anonymous, shall we say. I think you know who I'm sort of implying that's with. But I'll go to John Stuttard first, who covered 2 of Italy's matches during the group stages. Of course, you actually covered one of their matches. You covered the Italy 3 Switzerland 0 game 8 days ago, in which Italy were very impressive and the game before against Turkey. Are they the best side that you've seen at this tournament so far? And do you believe that they've gone and been better than what you thought they were going to be?
Actually, funnily enough, Matt, I actually had them down as dark horses for the thing at the start, to be perfectly honest. I have to say they've been the most entertaining side. Certainly when I saw them play against Switzerland, I did the commentary alongside Russ, and it was, it was just a pleasure to watch. As bad as Switzerland were, you cannot deny that Italy were entertaining. And I've got to be honest, they have been, out of all the teams that I've seen so far in the tournament, and I've seen one or two good games, but I think Italy have been very much the entertainers. But the only worry I've got with Italy at the moment is they haven't had anybody significantly strong to face yet. I mean, you've got Austria that's coming up on obviously on Saturday night. So that would be the only worry. But I think so far, they've scored 7 goals, 3 in the first game against Turkey, 3 in the second game against Switzerland, 1 against Wales. Yeah, they're looking very good. No goals conceded. 30 matches unbeaten. They are going well. It's when it gets deeper into the tournament, that's where the real test will come for Italy, I think, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I can't disagree with what you're saying, of course. As they do say, the tournament does get on, and the further you go, the tests do become real harder. And, of course, Austria, you'd think, would put up a better test. They, of course, are playing on Saturday at 8 o'clock at Wembley Stadium. I'll go to Russ on Wales, of course. Many didn't think Wales was going to fare as well as they did in 2016, but watching them from a distance, of course, I covered their game against Italy on Sunday, and it's very much sort of repeating what they did 5 years ago. They're building on that same sort of spirit that carried them through, that got them to the semi-finals. Of course, they possess Ramsey and Bale, who on their day are 2 fine players for Wales. You've seen some emerging players in the national side. Joe Rodon, for me, in the group stages was superb for Wales. I thought Danny Ward at times was excellent for Rob Page's side. They took 4 points in Baku, which was geographically the longest journey they could have took before the tournament even began and before the group stages were drawn. So they passed that test and only lost 1-0 to Italy when they were down to 10 men for half an hour. Have you been surprised by the Welsh in this tournament so far, Russ? Or are you very much, that you kind of expected them to get that second place?
I expect them to go through, but and in second place as well. I think, for me, I would have thought Switzerland would have come bottom, not third. But I think Wales have done really, really well. I expect them to do well. They've got good players in the squad, in Aaron Ramsey and Gareth Bale as well, and also the man who's yet to feature for them, who could have a good impact if he comes on in the latter stages, is Tyler Roberts, who can play in the number 10 or up front as well. So he's got the various options they can play for the side. And I think Kiefer Moore as well. I think I've been surprised with him. I didn't expect him to be on the score sheet in the games he got on the score sheet, especially against Switzerland. I didn't expect him to do that well against the Swiss defence. But I think Wales overall have done really, really well and done what I expected them to do, Matt.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the side who finished third place, one of the best 4 out of the 6 was Switzerland. Of course, it did look really bleak for them, didn't it? After that defeat they took against Italy in their second game, but they did recover to get a good resounding win against Turkey. Certainly a confidence booster for them. Mike Harneman, of course, it felt like to me watching the Wales game, on another day they would have took 3 points and they were probably a little bit unlucky that they didn't win. But of course, they managed to get managed to get third place, one of the best 4 out of the 6 sides. They're pretty much what we thought they were going to be. Surely Switzerland, they were going to face the better sides, going to, come up and not be as strong. But then when they play the Wales and the Turkeys, they were going to get 4 points. It feels like with Switzerland, they've not really done anything more than what we expected them to.
Yeah, I think you got it sort of bang on the money, really. You've hit the nail on the head there perfectly. I think when you look at the Swiss, they've got some really good players, of course, in Bolo, Zuba, Shaqiri. They are the side that I had them down to finish third in that group, and I wasn't sure whether they would have qualified as one of the best 3 teams to go through. The best of the third place teams to go through, I should say. But when you look at their squad on paper, they've got a very good squad, and I was quite pleased to see them go through. The game against Turkey, they were very good, and the game against Wales, as you say, they were very much, on another day could have got maximum points.
Yeah, absolutely. We just had a comment from someone who brings us on to our next point. My name is Canny, so I presume your name's Canny. I could be massively wrong there.
Luke Gator.
She comments and says that Turkey was a massive L in the Euros, which I don't think she's wrong at all. You can see the comment there. Thank you for putting your comments in. Remember,
sorry, Matt, can I put you straight?
Yeah.
Can I put you straight on that? He's actually a 9-year-old. He's a 10-year-old.
Well,
he's a 10-year-old lad. It's all right. He's one of my subscribers. Don't worry.
Take that back.
I'm sure you won't be offended, Matt. Don't worry. Just wanted to put you straight on it.
That's fine. Thank you for jumping in with that, of course. Thank you for your comment, Canny, in that regard. Turkey had a lot of good individual players. We knew Soyuncu, Çalhanoğlu had a good year at AC Milan, Yilmaz for Lille, Yazici. There was a few predictions from people that thought they were going to be in the top 3, maybe sneak in, but instead they've ended up going home pointless and winless. John Kane, were you surprised by Turkey in this tournament, given just how poor they were?
I was actually very surprised. I thought at least they'll get a couple of points off the team that they're playing, and we're talking about Switzerland and Wales. No one was expecting Italy to be that good, but when they turned up, obviously they got all their points, but Turkey playing Italy, just disregard that. But the other two, you'll think at least they will get at least a point of each. And against Switzerland, I mean, Switzerland were very good on the night, or Turkey were absolutely dreadful. And I could not understand how Turkey, who actually got, like you mentioned, loads of individual players who play in very big clubs as well. So it's not like small clubs we're talking about. You talk about the Lille, the champions of France, Milan, and all that, and they could not play as a team. And it was actually the point. I know it's a different group, but I expected that performance to come from Holland, because I said before the tournament, Holland will be the team, will be game of individuals, but not playing as a team. But actually, I was shocked to see that actually was Turkey was the one who turned up to be a team with no spirit, or team with no playing. However, there is I don't know if anyone heard that, but since yesterday, I don't know if it's true or not, but I've seen it in so many places. Apparently, Turkey is thinking of going back to the Asian Federation in the next couple of years. I don't understand the reason why, and I looked at it and I can't see any reasons behind it, but it has been really strong rumors, and it's not just rumors. It seems like something is happening behind the scenes. They're thinking of going back to their roots and play in the Asian, becoming part of the Asian Confederation.
Well, of course, if you're very into your geography, you'll know that Turkey is very much in between Europe and in Asia, so it'll be very interesting to see. It's not the first time you've sort of heard teams tout switching confederations. Look at Australia. They went from their Oceanic group, which they were absolutely trouncing everybody, to going in the Asian group, which was more competitive. And I think that's fair to say that was a wiser move. Of course, there was another comment from JST Killer, whoever you are. Thank you for that. It says about Turkey, overhyped everyone, thought they were going to do pretty good, but we all saw what happened. And to be fair, that is a comment you really cannot take out of respect, and it's one that I think certainly is a very, very good one. Let's move on to Group B. I'm going to go to Nicholas Jones for this one. I'm going to talk about Denmark, first of all, who obviously was second. Of course, there's been so much talk about them. You could almost say they've been team of the tournament because of their spirit and their character in terms of coming back from the horriblest episode of the tournament in Christian Eriksen collapsing. So I'll go on to them first in just a second. But obviously, Belgium were top of the group on 9 points. And Denmark finished in second on 3. Finland went out on 3 in third. And Russia were fourth as well on 3 points as well. But of course, Finland's goal difference was not good enough to take them through as one of the best third place sides. And before I do go to you, Nicholas, I will have to say what an incredible job you did do during the Denmark-Finland game. I mean, obviously, it's a scary episode for people watching, let alone someone commentating. So I'll take my hat off to you, even though I'm not actually wearing a hat right now, as you can see. So well done to you in that respect to sort of perform and carry the can in that regard. And Russ Vernon gives a little round of applause, as does Mike. So very deserving of that. It could have affected Denmark. It almost felt like Christian Eriksen's cardiac arrest just completely got the whole country on side. And it almost was one of those where everyone in Europe was pretty much saying if anyone deserves to go through, it's Denmark, isn't it? And the spirit they've shown, the character, everything about them's just been tip-top, isn't it? And, very fitting that they have gone through, isn't it, to the knockout stages.
Yes, it certainly is very fitting that that they've gone through to the knockout stage, given the circumstances. But I was actually hoping deep down that Finland would be the best of the would be one of the best of the third place teams. So I feel kind of sad for them.
Yeah, of course, they didn't make it through, but of course, what is important for them is they did manage to take their first 3 points at the European Championships in their first ever major tournaments. Of course, that win against Denmark, which you could say actually was insignificant given what happened to Eriksson, was something that Finnish football will certainly remember for all the big, good reasons for winning, but of course, reasons for a player and Christian Eriksen actually being pretty much on the pitch, but obviously surviving after being resuscitated and by the medical staff who did a terrific job, it might be added.
I was just going to say, Matt, did you see that there was over 6,000 complaints as well in regards to the footage that was shown to a certain company? And the fact that they didn't cut away in time and they kind of focused in on it quite heavy.
In fairness,
no, I didn't see that actually. No.
I think from what I saw is that basically the company get the stream, and they should have cut away earlier. They should have done, but the pictures that
we agree.
Particularly zooming in, they had no control over. So I felt. It was such a difficult situation. I don't know how they were meant to deal with it, really. But I think they should have cut away a lot earlier. They certainly stayed on the pitch too long, I think.
Yeah, of course, you do get the beauty of hindsight. And I probably think the big wigs within that certain company probably look at it and thought it was the wrong decision. But, of course, you have to do what you do at the time. And, obviously, look back and reflect is the best thing to do. But, obviously, it's moved on. And, obviously, let's hope that their coverage, and it has been since, to be fair, has been very, very good. Let's talk about the table toppers, Belgium, then. I'll go to Mike Harneman on this one. Belgium, of course, came into the tournament, the best side in world football. They've not disappointed. I mean, against Russia and Finland, they brushed those sides apart, completely dominated them from top to bottom, which they do like. They do like playing those sort of sides. Against Denmark, first 45 minutes, they were outplayed. They were outfought, outclassed. But it was a different type of Belgium, wasn't it? They had to come back, rethink, refocus, and they had to come from behind to win, and they did that. And I think that game in particular probably showed me that this is a Belgian team that mentally is as strong as probably we've ever seen it, given in the World Cup 2014, Euros in 2016, and the World Cup in 2018, when they did go behind in the big games, they weren't able to get out of it and get the result. Is this a different Belgium side that we've seen in the previous few tournaments?
I think the key factor with Belgium, in that game in particular, was Kevin De Bruyne of Manchester City. I think obviously he got a goal, he got an assist as well. And I think the fact that he'd come back, I think he missed the first game, didn't he? And this was his first game back, I believe. Or maybe he played one game before. But anyway, either way, like Kevin De Bruyne come into that side, and they really look a different side with him in the side than when he's out of the squad, or when he's unavailable for injury or whatever. So I think Kevin De Bruyne is a big player for them, and Hazard, both Hazards in fact played their part as well, but Kevin De Bruyne is the main man and the man that you're going to look at in regards to if Belgium are going to go far, they need to keep Kevin De Bruyne fit and firing.
Yes, absolutely. They certainly do. And Romelu Lukaku, of course, who many did think would be the Golden Boot winner, has looked absolutely sensational so far. He scored 2 against Russia. And, of course, he scored against Finland in the last game. That meant he's on 3 goals for the tournament. Let's talk about Finland then. Nicholas Jones said he was gutted that they didn't quite go through. They nearly went through, but they just missed out on having a minus goal difference. I'll go to Luke Turton on this one. Luke, I mean, obviously, Finland's first ever major tournament. A lot of people would have not known any of their players apart from Teemu Pukki and potentially maybe slightly more. A few others, maybe Lukas Radecki, who plays in the Bundesliga for Bayer Leverkusen. Are we surprised that they even did manage to get a win in the group? Or, given how they play, and if you've watched them in qualifying or friendlies before, they very much played what they play like at the Euros. So Were you quite surprised that they did beat Denmark in a game that was pretty irrelevant, unfortunately for them? And did you think they overachieved in what they did in their first tournament?
I don't think they overachieved, because I think they handled the situation perfectly. Because what I've got to remember is they were also affected by Ericsson as well as Denmark. So I think for them to compose themselves and come back out and play again as well, they have huge credit for that. I think Denmark players were shaken a lot more. I think that's where Finland got the victory. But I was impressed with them against Belgium because they kept it quite tight, and it was only towards the end that Belgium started to score against Finland. So Belgium scored against Finland. So yeah, I think it was they did pretty well to say it's a first tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, let's hope that isn't the last time that we see Finland at a major tournament. Of course, they might be the next Euros in 3 years' time. Who knows? I'll go to Russ Vernon for the Russia point of view. Obviously, they were well beat by Belgium in their first game and were completely outplayed. Stanislav Cherchesov, the coach, shuffled the pack. They got a win against Finland, which they needed to do to stay in the tournament. Against Denmark, they were, second best in every department as well. They pretty much had the same approach from the World Cup 3 years ago. How come it didn't quite work out for them this time round than what it did on home soil? Do you think that them playing at their own World Cup 3 years ago was the reason they did get to the quarterfinals?
I think so, but another reason why it probably didn't work out this time, Matt, is because they more or less got the same squad that they had at the World Cup in their country for this Euros, and the teams and the country, should I say, will they come up against know how they're going to set up, know how they're going to play, so they can work the tactics around that. And they've not really, for me, Russia didn't really change the tactics from the World Cup to this Euros. And I think if they are to go into the next World Cup and the next Euros, they may need to tweak some tactics and maybe get fresh head coaching to make those changes, or get fresh personnel in the fresh different players in, but keeping the majority of the same squad from the World Cup to this Euros, and that could have been a big factor in why they didn't do very well this time around.
Yes, absolutely. So we've wrapped through groups A and B. We've still got 4 more groups to go. Remember, you can have your say on the various social media channels. We're on JB Sports, Commentary Hub, YouTube's page, on our official page, Commentary Hub, and on Commentary Hub 2. We're on Mike Harneman's YouTube. So if his followers are listening, please do get in touch with us. Ask any of our pundits or experts. I say experts, quotation. Any questions on the Euros so far and what's to come in the next few weeks or so. Your predictions. A Commentary Live Twitch page, and of course Russ Vernon's followers on Twitch. Do please get in touch with us if you can. Let's move on to Group C. Of course, the Netherlands coasted to top spot, 3 wins from 3. Second were Austria. For the first time in their history, they've made the knockout stages. Ukraine were third. They sneaked in as one of the best 4 sides who finished third, and bottom of North Macedonia on their day. But go to Barry Swain first. You covered the Netherlands in their opening game against Ukraine, which was probably one of the best games in the group stages, given just how the nature of the game sort of was. You saw the Dutch try to dominate, Ukraine tried to counter-attack, and the Dutch very dominant in large spells, but they just sort of had a mad 5-10 minute period where they did just switch off, and many thought that they would be the side who'd be so good going forward, but defensively be very, very weak. Since that, they haven't conceded against North Macedonia and Austria. But the main question is, have you been surprised by their start that they've made? Because it almost felt like with De Boer in charge, given his club record at his various clubs after Ajax, it wasn't going to quite work for him. But it does feel like that the Dutch now have really come into the fold as their own, haven't they? They've really shown an identity to play.
Yeah, it was an entertaining game against Ukraine. 0-0 at half-time, 5 goals in the second half. De Boer, I think we spoke about him in the previous podcast. Everyone looks at him for what he'd done at Crystal Palace. He's had a decent spell in the MLS. He's done a decent job, at the start of his career in the Eredivisie. So you can't really judge him on that Crystal Palace episode, which didn't even last a handful of games, did it? I wasn't complete. I don't think any of us were completely convinced by this Dutch squad. We knew they were going to miss Van Dijk. There's still a question marks on that defence, and that defence was certainly exposed in that game against the Ukraine. But they've got a couple of clean sheets under their belt. The lad Dumfries looks good going forward down the right-hand side. They've got a little bit of firepower going forward. Are they good enough to win the tournament? Probably not, but they're where they wanted to be, and that's in the knockout stages. 3 wins out of 3. We did say in that review a couple of weeks ago, 3 games at home at Amsterdam Arena, that made a big difference. They've made that home advantage count. It'll be interesting to see how they get on at the knockout stages. They haven't really been tested yet. Austria and Ukraine are okay, but against one of the big guns, that's where they're going to get tested.
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, they will be facing the Czech Republic, England's opponents from Group D in their first knockout game. Of course, they'll be hoping to reach the quarterfinals of the European Championships in 2020. John Kane, I just want to ask you a question on the Netherlands, actually. I mean, it's sort of the same thing with Barry. You were very adamant at the start of the tournament that the Dutch would sink rather than swim. Have you been sort of taken aback by that? Have you been surprised by the way they've played and how much of a team they actually look? Because it feels like to me their identity is very clear to see, isn't it? They want to get the fullbacks pushing on. They want to use Memphis Depay at every possible opportunity. Have you been surprised in any way by sort of how they've fared, given what you made at the start of the European Championships?
I have to admit, I am very surprised of how Holland how good they have been. However, as Barry's mentioned, they haven't been really tested yet properly. They have played good ordinary teams in Austria and Ukraine, but they're not really played. And even then, I mean, you can see there's few holes in their defence that it can be exposed by bigger clubs when you actually watch the games that Holland played. But in overall, I'm surprised actually they made it of the group, because I actually did say that they won't even get out of the group stage. But I can tell you what would happen is Frank de Boer would probably win the tournament, end up at Spurs, get Spurs relegated, and then come back to Holland again. So,
well, I'm surprised he hasn't actually been linked with the Tottenham job yet, actually, Frank de Boer, given that every manager in European football, it feels like, has been linked with them, so much so that they've had all these names under the sun, turn them down, and yet they still can't seem to nail onto a manager. Of course, John Stutter will be covering Austria's game against Italy on Saturday, and it's very much sort of right on cue to bring you in. Austria, for the first time in their history, as I mentioned, qualified for the knockout stages of the European Championships. They were really poor 5 years ago. 2 wins from 3 against Ukraine and North Macedonia. Against the Dutch, they were pretty poor. Obviously, I covered the game with Justin, and I felt with Austria, it was just kind of not really how you'd expect them to play. Now, they're a very good sort of possession-based sort of side. They want to keep the ball, work it in every opportunity. But, David Alaba was very... not in his right position, in a team where they were playing so slowly, he doesn't really come out. He doesn't really want to, do a lot for the team. And I don't think that's anything against him, but I think that was the way they were playing. And you need to have a David Alaba who's good when they're really, playing quick, playing energetic, like they were at times against North Macedonia and Ukraine. How do you assess them against the Italians? Because as you said earlier, the Italians haven't quite had a test to the 3 sides they've played in the group. Do you think there'll be an upgrade on what the Italians have faced in the group? And what do you think, for somebody who's not watched Austria, what sort of is going to be their biggest threat?
Well, of course, I mean, the obvious players are Arnautovic, but he's had a mixed bag of tournaments, and he with the 1-game suspension for a remark, which we won't go into, but so it has been a bit of a mixed bag. I mean, they've had 2 wins from 3 against the Dutch. I believe they were poor. I don't think they're going to test Italy that much unless they're on there get the likes of Alaba, as you saying, that in the position that he likes, possibly playing for Bayern Munich. And Arnautovic is on song, Bart Malinga, all these brilliant players they do have, these individual players, they need to be on their game. My worry for them against Italy is, will Italy be too strong for them as a team? My view will be yes. We'll just have to wait and see on Saturday. But it's a terrific achievement for them to get to the knockout rounds. But I think this might be a bridge too far for them this time, even with Arnautovic and Alaba and all these key players that they'll have. I just think with Italy, the way things are going at the moment, the Azzurri will go to Wembley full of confidence. 3 wins out of 3. The Austrians didn't play well by all accounts against the Dutch. That could play on their mind. So it's going to be a tough ask for them. And I can see Italy winning this one, possibly comfortably. But it all depends on what Austria turn up. Is it the Jekyll? Is it the Hyde? They have had a mixed bag so far. Yeah, they've had 2 wins, but they're a very indisciplined side, obviously, with the Arnautovic incident. So we're not sure what Austria is going to turn up, but it's a great achievement, whatever happens to them from now on in. But I do fear for them. Will their discipline go? That's my main question mark so far with the Austrians.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I couldn't agree more on the Austrians. Let's hope it's the right Austria that turns up on Saturday and gives the Azzurri a bit of a fright. Don't worry, Jack. I'm going to come to you now about Ukraine. I do know you're on the stream, so don't worry, mate. You are sitting there very, very quietly, watching from a distance. Ukraine, of course, they've, before this championship, played in 2 tournaments. They lost every game 5 years ago. They won against Sweden in 2012 on home soil. They are through this year. They will be facing Sweden on Monday evening in the final of the round of 16 games. What have you made of them during this tournament so far?
Yeah, so I mean, well, Barry obviously mentioned the Holland-Ukraine game at the beginning of the tournament. It probably was one of my favourite games of the group stage, to be fair. That goal from Yarmolenko was a cracker, although if you're going to let him come on his left foot, he's probably going to do that, isn't he? And then the other goal, free header. You know, they defended pretty well against Holland, like to keep it 0-0 at half time. But then once they get it back to 2-2, they really should have got something from it. But to lose it like that must have been absolutely gutting for them. And then against Austria, I mean, obviously they beat North Macedonia, so they did their job. And then against Austria, just didn't really do enough for me. I've been impressed with Sweden, so you know, Ukraine, I think, you know, they've got through. Well done to Shevchenko, obviously, you know, legend of Ukrainian football. He's done his job. He's gotten through the group stage, but I think Sweden will probably have too much for them. I don't think Ukraine have been that good, to be fair. You know, they beat North Macedonia, but like that was expected. They should be then doing a bit more against Austria. They were a bit unlucky against Holland, really, but yeah, I think Sweden will have too much for them.
So that's Ukraine wrapped up in that group. Now we'll go to North Macedonia. Of course, they were the 2, them and Finland, the debutants in this tournament. Nicholas, I mean, North Macedonia, I mean, against Austria, did score. Goran Pandev, I mean, that was a nice moment. Everyone seems to forget about that, doesn't he? He's older than the country itself. He scored their first ever major tournament goal. He bowed out in his final game at the European Championships with his country. He's practically a legend there. How did you think they fared in the tournament? I mean, they gave Austria a fairly good game. They certainly tested the Dutch in the first half before the quality of the Dutch shone through. Against Ukraine, they had some decent chances in the game. What did you make of Igor Angelovski's side in the tournament?
I'm actually surprised that they did as well as they did in their games. But personally, I didn't give them a hope of getting beyond the first stage. I thought they were just going to lose all of their games, and they did. But to give a performance like that is completely unbelievable, and for such a club legend like you just mentioned to go out like that is just incredible. I mean, who knows whether North Macedonia will be back at tournaments like that in years to come.
Yeah, we will wait and see indeed as North Macedonia head home on 0 points. But they can certainly take some respect from that tournament and certainly hold their heads in regard. We now want to move on to Group D. England finished top of it on 7 points. They didn't concede a single goal in that either. Of course, as Russ gives a little cheer, I think everyone else is secretly trying to give it. Let's see your best cheers. No, I'm joking. Obviously, second were Croatia. They leapfrogged Czech Republic on the last match day after they beat Scotland. Czech Republic were third and Scotland were fourth on a point. Of course, Scotland actually made a record. They were the first ever side to win a game at the Euros 0-0. Sorry for any Scottish fans. Of course, they bowed out. And of course, they've got the unwanted record. I think it's 11 tournaments, 11 times they've been knocked out in the group stages. And now you've got a little message for them, Russ, haven't you? If you want to read it out. But
I have my yes. But Oh, it's a song actually. Scotland get battered everywhere they go. Scotland get battered everywhere they go. Everywhere they go.
Controversial.
Beautiful voice you got there, Russ.
All
The
the,
X
all
Factor.
the Scottish viewers, all the Scottish viewers are turned
Absolutely.
off now.
Get them all.
Available on CD, and you can download it as well. And I'm sure we'll get it.
Yeah, get
And
on Spotify.
yeah,
The commentary hub is officially, I think I've just read on Facebook, been banned in Scotland. So
Yeah.
we've just lost a
Nicholas
large
Sturgeon
section of
is not
audience there.
happy.
Matt, there's a guy in a tartan hat that's just walked past your window. Actually,
Is he
Yeah,
the same
sorry.
one that tried to kick the table and missed?
Let's move on to obviously England. They topped the group, 7 points, 2 goals, none conceded, 2 wins from the 3 they played. I'm going to go to Barry on this one. England, in the 2 games they won, weren't particularly great for 90 minutes. The first half, they were excellent. It's just how in the second half they managed the game, which I think we haven't actually seen in many tournaments with England. They do often make it hard for themselves when they have to win games, but the game management has been superb. Defensively, they've been largely untested, you could say. It was only Scotland really that put us under a bit of pressure. Yes, we're not creating as much opportunities as what many people would like, given the attacking quality that we've got, but on the whole, there's more reasons to be positive than negative, isn't there?
Well, of course, yeah. We haven't conceded a goal. We defended pretty well. I think the trouble is we've got so much firepower. We're spending more time moaning that the likes of Jadon Sancho are not out on the field for long enough. He can't use them all. He's getting a little bit lambasted for playing 2 holding midfielders. I think we've got to trust the manager to do it his way. He's going to need to play those holding midfielders later in the tournament because we're not winning games 5-0 and we're not, in most people's eyes, firing on all cylinders. It's where we want to be, really, England at the moment. We're not getting too fired up. I'm not seeing too many St George's flags dangling out of car windows. So that's illegal now, isn't it? I think. So, it's not quite the height that it has been before. It probably will be now because we've gone into that weaker half of the knockout stages. And if we can beat Germany, that might all change as we go further into the tournament, if we can beat Germany, of course. But the group stages, we haven't set the world alight. But I would imagine, we've heard it from an English point of view, but from other countries, they'll probably be sitting there saying, look at England, they haven't got out of second gear yet. They haven't conceded a goal. We want to avoid them. They're not in top gear. No one's talking about England. That's where Gareth Southgate will want England to be at the moment. Plenty of pluses, not conceding a goal. I don't think it's the easiest group either, and Scotland really did give us a run for our money in the rain at Wembley, and it was a great 0-0 win for them, like you say. No, in all fairness, they did. Their game plan was brilliant. Steve Clarke, hats off to him. I think he's a very, very good manager. He got it spot on, and teams might well be looking at his tactics and saying, well, what did he do there that nullified it? What can we take out of that? The Czech Republic, Croatia, they're both through. 4 points. They're good teams as well. They could well go further on in the tournament. It's not the easiest group, this one, and we always felt it was going to be a tough group because Scotland with a weak link potentially in there, and obviously they're not going to be the weak link up against England. So we've done well. We've got through the group, 7 points out of 9, and we haven't conceded a goal. What else can you ask for apart from 9 points and a couple of 5-0 wins, which was never going to happen?
Of course, you can't please everybody in this country, as everybody knows. And John Kane, you covered the Croatia game for us around about 11 days ago now it was. What in particular about that game against Croatia and the rest of the tournament has impressed you about England?
I think what impressed me about England against Croatia is their stability and the resilience, especially in that midfield. Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips had been absolutely superb in that holding midfield role. And I said it before, if you actually got a good defense and a good holding midfield role actually in that team, then the goals will come forward because you'll be attacking more and you'll be relying on 6 solid players in the back because the 2 holding midfielders are actually doing that job as well. But in that game as well, we saw man of the match, which was Calvin Phillips, was going forward in so many times. He was given the license and he had a good cover by Declan Rice. And we have to take that as a big advantage for England. And I hope that he stick with both of them in that holding midfield role.
No,
You got it absolutely right, John. Coming back to what you said is absolutely spot on.
no.
You know, if England had Achilles heel, it was for the last 2 or 3 years. It's been, is that defence good enough? We've got so much going forward, but defensively at the moment, although we haven't been tested, we've got it absolutely right, haven't we?
Yeah, bang on. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think as well with England, of course, there was even more questions about the defence, given Harry Maguire only played in one of the 3 group matches, given how fit he was. And there was a real concern about Tyrone Mings, who I thought in the 2 games he played was pretty good for England, just did what he had to do, 2 clean sheets as well. And he's the one who's, feeling good about it. Of course, you can hear a little bit of background noise from John's screen. I'll go to Luke, actually. The final question on England. What have you made of Southgate in this tournament? Because he's had praise for the wins that we've had. Against Scotland, he was heavily criticised for not really throwing the kitchen sink at Scotland in what was the biggest game of the group. How do you think he's dealt with it, and how do you think he's fared in this tournament? Have you been disappointed by him? I mean, obviously, it's not a lot to be disappointed about on the outside, but in terms of the tactical breakdown of how we've played as a nation so far.
Now, just bear in mind that I've spent most of the season watching Forest, and I've watched setting up to just get results and not get beat is very much that speciality. And I think that is very much what Southgate did. He set the team up to get the job done, not to entertain. And I think that's where his interviews differ from someone like Rob Page. Because Rob Page versus Italy came out and said, we're going to think about our own game. We're going to go out and try and get a result against Italy. I don't think I've ever heard Southgate say that. It's all, we're setting up with the fullbacks against Croatia to try and protect against their experienced wingers. Worrying about their side than thinking about what we can actually do to win the game. And I think I'm not a big Southgate fan, I will confess, but he has got us through another group stage, and I think we'll judge him more now on what he does in the knockout stage. I think is what I'd say.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, that is where England managers do get judged, isn't it? The group stages is where you'd expect England to be, isn't it? Top of the table. Pretty much they shouldn't have lost the game. They didn't. They did the job, as Barry said, and they got through on 7 points. Second place were Croatia, the World Cup finalists, of course. There was a bit of a grudge match when England played them first time round. England won 1-0. They laboured against the Czech Republic and drew 1-0, but against Scotland, they turned it on with Luka Modric having an absolute masterclass in there, showing his quality and why he's been such a good player down the years. Russ Vernon, I'm going to go to you on this one. Croatia, of course, it was expected they weren't going to be the same height of what they were 3 years ago. A lot of the old guard have retired. Your Mandzukic, your Rakitic, Subasic. They still had Modric, Dejan Lovren, Perisic, Kovacic from Chelsea, Ante Rebic. It was still a good Croatia side, and they've pretty much done like what England were expected to do, and that is qualify, isn't it?
We have, yes. And touching on the England game against Croatia, that midfield for England of Rice and Phillips did a very good job on Modric and Kovacic. They're 2 older midfielders who like to get forward as well, like one of ours, either Rice goes forward, Phillips stays back. That was a bit like what Croatia do, one of them stays back, one of them goes forward. And I think where England played against those, we nullified them. Czech Republic, they got a draw with 1-1 draw with them. They didn't really nullify Modric and Kovacic for me in that game. And then I didn't really see the Scotland game. I've seen highlights and in bits of that, because obviously I was watching the England game against the Republic on Tuesday. But the highlights I saw, Scotland didn't really close down Modric and Kovacic like England did. And I think that's where Croatia exploited him more. They got the better of the opposition teams by being able to bypass their midfield and get their back four. Whereas with England, they didn't really do that. I think Croatia going forward, if they can bypass the opposition's midfield, starting with Spain's midfield, and then I think they could go into the next. I think they could go into the quarterfinals, but it just depends if Modric and Kovacic can get beyond that midfield, and support the strikers a bit more than what they did in the England game for me.
Yeah, of course, they would be playing Spain in the knockout stages. Of course, that is a game that will be covered on Commentary Hub. You're listening to the group stage review on the Commentary Hub. We're on JB Sports, Commentary Hub YouTube channel, and the Commentary Hub 2. We're on Mike Heineman's YouTube channel, of course. We're on Russ Vernon's Twitch and the Commentary Live Twitch. So any platform that you're watching on, please do get in touch. Feel free. Don't be afraid. You can get your voice heard, and obviously you can get your comment read out on the show. Let's go and move on to the Czech Republic. Jaroslav Suhavi's side qualified in third place. They were already through before they played England, but of course they went down to third place, and they'll be playing the Dutch we spoke about earlier on. Nicholas Jones, you saw their game against Croatia. What impressed you in particular about the Czechs? I mean, they possess one of the hottest strikers in the tournament in Patrick Schick. What did you make of Jaroslav Suhavi's side? And do you think they have sort of surprised people by the way they've played in this tournament so far?
Yes, they certainly surprised me when I was doing their game against Croatia about a week or so ago, and Patrick Schick. I was really impressed with the way he handled proceedings throughout the game, despite being fouled, and he took the subsequent penalty with absolute ease. And he's been the standout player for the Czech Republic for me, and to see them progress to the round of 16, very surprising to me. I don't see them going beyond the round of 16, though.
Well, of course, they do face the Dutch, as I did mention, in the round of 16. Let's touch on Scotland, of course, as they were obviously knocked out in last place. I'll go to Jack first. You were very much under the impression they would not do anything at Euro 2020. They did get a draw against England. They had chances against the Czech Republic. It's quite difficult to do this with Scotland, isn't it? Because obviously in a way, they're quite happy to be there. But do you think they've got to be a bit surprised that they didn't really get better than what they got in the tournament? I mean, it looked at their group, and yes, it's competitive, but you've almost got to look at it and say, given the form they sort of went into the tournament with, they probably should have done a little bit better.
Yeah, I mean, I said they wouldn't get a point. They got one. So disappointingly against England, unfortunately, they got to celebrate their 0-0 win, as we've all mentioned. But they, against the Czech Republic, they did have chances. Can't argue they had chances, but their defending was naive. You can't do anything about Sheik's second goal, but to be fair, I don't know what Marshall's doing. But it's the first goal, poor defending. It's got a free header, heads it in. Then after that, they do have chances. Robertson was a bit unlucky at the crossbar. Lyndon Dykes definitely should have scored at least one. That was their game. If they won that, they probably had a strong chance of going through. But as it was, it didn't turn out that way. Gilmore played well against England. Obviously, then got COVID and had to isolate. They definitely missed him against Croatia. I think if they'd had him, they would have been at get about more with Modric, etc. So, yeah, it was just really disappointing from Scotland, really. And everyone's gone off with me talking. So,
don't worry, we were just doing little things off air. So don't worry, we did value your opinion. But no, I do agree with you with that. And I think maybe Billy Gilmore's absence in that last game might have not necessarily made that much of an impact in the scoreline, but it certainly would have been one of those. His presence would have been definitely felt. Let's move on to Group E. We've got two more groups to go through. It finished simply like this. Sweden finishes group winners on 7 points. Not many people thought they'd finish above Spain, who finished in second on 5. And then Slovakia finished third, but they went home as one of the two worst third place sides. And of course, last were Poland, who had 2 points. I go to John Kane, who is in Spain. Of course, he lives in Torre Vieja. I hope I've pronounced that right. I think I've probably got that completely wrong. Obviously, you spoke about how they liked the team. They liked what Enrique was trying to do, but they didn't like Morata. And he is one of those strikers. He's got to be one of the most frustrating, isn't he? I mean, against Sweden, he missed a glorious 1-on-1. Missed a penalty against Slovakia yesterday. Doesn't really matter because they won 5-0. But what did you make of Spain in the tournament early on? Because they have all this possession. They're so good to watch in terms of keeping the ball. It's such a nice thing to see it. You know, they do it for fun, but against Sweden, against Poland, they just missed something, didn't they? That against Slovakia was clearly there to see, which was the Spain of old, wasn't it? How do you rate the Spanish in the group stages? And what's the reaction as well from the Spanish public, if you've been able to sort of interact with them at all?
Yeah, of course. I think from my point of view, I thought Spain were a bit entertaining, but like you said, they're missing something because they've got fantastic individual players. And when you actually see them, like they show pictures on the Spanish media with training and stuff like that, you're thinking, marvelous, absolutely marvelous. They're really, really great. And you see, obviously, all the record of all their players, or most of their players, and you think they will aim to win this. They're here to win it. However, I think, and I said it before the tournament in our last show, and I'll say it again, is Morata is the weakest link. I mean, even yesterday, after talk about the Spanish point of view, even yesterday, after the Spanish game yesterday, and obviously Spain won 5-0, and the Spanish presenter was talking to Morata after the game, and Morata actually asked a question, and he said, why the Spanish people don't like me? So he knows that he is not doing what he's supposed to do, and that is score goals. And I know it's a penalty. I know there's a chance of penalties being missed, but he had lots of chances. He had chances at Madrid. He had chances at Chelsea, and he missed always. He's overrated striker as far as I'm concerned. And I think the minute Luis Enrique realised that Morata is not the answer for Spain, I think Spain will do much, much better in the next couple of rounds.
Very interesting to hear you say that. And of course, Luis Enrique showed plenty of favour to Alvaro Morata. When he scored the goal against Poland, of course, there was the scenes of when he went over to Enrique to congratulate him. As sort of, you could say, his faith sort of paid off in that game, and maybe not throughout the tournament. But we're about to see if maybe Morata could come alive in this tournament and really show why he is so important in this Spanish side to Luis Enrique. Anyways, La Roja will take on Croatia in the round of 16, a game that Mike Harneman is covering for the commentary hub. Russ Vernon, you'll be covering Sweden against Ukraine. They were group winners in Group E. They're a very defensive side. They, play how you expect them to play Sweden. They were very like it in the World Cup again with Jana Andersson. He's done exactly the same again. They've got good individual players, Victor Claesson, Emil Forsberg, Marcus Berg up front. Alexander Isak has really emerged as a real talisman for Sweden in the absence of Zlatan Ibrahimovic. They're a tough side to play against, but on the break, they've got a lot about them, haven't they?
They have, yes. And from what I've seen of them so far this tournament, obviously I didn't see the game yesterday against Poland, but I did catch the highlights of that one as well because I was covering the Spain game yesterday for the channel. And I think for Sweden, especially in the game against Poland, they rely majority of the time on the counter attack, trying to break them down that way, especially with Volodymyr Lewandowski. I think going forward, they may against Ukraine may try and rely on the counter attack again, try and get the wingers in and behind and get forward very, very quickly from the back. And I think if Sweden perform like they can do and like they have done in the group stage, and obviously they finished top, good positive result against Spain, and then good result against Slovakia as well, and then the game against Poland yesterday, I think Sweden will go to the quarterfinals, and then I think Sweden will get knocked out there by either England or Germany. I'm not going to say which one I think is going to be just yet.
No, that's understandable. So that was the thoughts on Sweden from Russ Vernon. I know that Mike Harneman has got something he wants to say about the Swedish side, given, of course, he was keeping a close eye on them against Poland yesterday in a game that Nicholas Jones covered for the commentary hub.
Yeah, so I think Sweden have been very good in the group stages. Of course, Russ mentioned there the game against Spain. I thought that was probably the defensive performance of the tournament, really, where they shut up shop and they were able to, kind of just do their job on Spain, really, and stick to their own game plan. And they didn't really look like they were going to win the game, but they didn't really look like they were going to lose the game either because they were pretty solid at the back. And when you look at the game yesterday, of course, they scored very early on in the first 2 minutes. They scored right in the 94th minute as well. So, it shows that they've got a lot of character about them as a side, as a squad. And Forsberg, for me, Forsberg's been fantastic. He got a brace yesterday. He scored in the game before as well, the 1-0 win. And I really like Sweden. Isak as well is another good player. that has played his part. But Sweden, as I say, they can defend. They've got good team spirit. There's quite a bit about Sweden. They're a good side.
Yeah, they are a good side indeed. They have been a side that I've actually quietly been impressed with. Of course, 7 points from 9 games for them. Drew against Spain, narrowly beat Slovakia 1-0 and beat Poland 3-2. John Stuttard, of course, you can't see his camera on. I'd love to know what he's doing off camera, to be fair. But he's still here, luckily. And obviously, I think Jadon Sancho's actually been used more than John Stuttard tonight. So I do apologise, John, I haven't gone to you that much. You obviously saw Poland against Spain last Saturday in a 1-1 draw. They rode their luck a little bit, but they were quite good value for that draw, I felt. And of course, Poland, more than anybody else in this tournament, have that reliance on Robert Lewandowski, don't they? You saw it with Russia, with Artem Zhuba, how much they need to use him for creating chances and scoring goals. Do you feel, though with Poland, that anything they do good goes through Robert Lewandowski? And it almost kind of felt like that was really there, wasn't it? And he couldn't quite just really bring a country through to the tournament, could he?
No, he couldn't. And it's sad really when a country pins their hopes on an individual player. Saying he could apply to Cristiano Ronaldo when he's carrying Portugal, obviously. But I have to say, I covered that match, and I actually thought Morata was good to give him his fair dues for the Spanish point of view. In fact, I think both goals were a bit controversial. I thought the first one, I was undone by VAR because they didn't show the right angle. So I'm mad at Spanish television for not showing the right angle. Because I initially thought, me and Russ were doing the game, he was presenting and I was doing the commentary, and I thought Morata was offside. But then another angle, about 5 minutes after the decision, proved that he was onside. So it made me look a bit red-faced. And also the equaliser, I think Lewandowski pushes Merrick to the port. So maybe both teams got away scot-free with decisions. I thought the back three against Spain, actually, Matt, were superb, especially Bednarek, Glick, and especially Szczesny, who I'd give the Man of the Match award to, because he made this, I think there was about 10 minutes to go in the game, and it was evenly balanced at 1-1. And I have to say, that match I did on Saturday night was one of the most action-packed 90 minutes of football I've done in a hell of a long time. And I've done over 350 games on my own channel in this one. And I think I've never had something as action-packed as that. And Szczesny made this save that was just totally out of this world, and it's winning the award. Because you think Spain are going to get through and score, and he just pulls off this save. Okay, Bednarek gets it off the line, but he just gets an important intervention. I thought the Poles did impress me in that game. It was just sad, really, that they couldn't take it far enough or get in there as a third place qualifier. But at the end of the day, it was always going to be tough for them. But they gave it their best shot. And as I said, probably, as you say, Matt, I think they've over relied a bit too much on Robert Lewandowski. And I think one or two of their discipline I thought they lost a bit of their discipline as well against the Spanish as well. I think both teams completely lost their discipline. And I'm amazed. We got so many yellow cards. I'm amazed we didn't get any sending off. But they'll count themselves a bit unfortunate, but that's just the way it goes sometimes in group football. You always don't get what you deserve.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, against Slovakia, you could probably say they might be on the wrong end of a decision when Gregor Krychowiak was sent off in that game in St. Petersburg, where, of course, he caught the Slovakian player. And, of course, they were 1-0 at that game. It was so close to call, and of course that really ultimately, you could say, pretty much decided their fate in Group E. Final group, and of course this was the most exciting one of the lot. It certainly didn't disappoint last night. Germany, Hungary, France and Portugal it finished France top on 5 points. Germany took second on 4. Portugal finished third on 4 as well, but Germany had a better goal difference. And Hungary finished fourth on 2 points. And to be fair, pretty admirable effort from Hungary, given nobody gave them a prayer of even scoring a goal or even getting a point in Group F. And of course, they gave Portugal a good game for 85 minutes before the quality shone through. They got a point at the world champions, and they really gave Germany a fright in their game. So I'll talk about the French first. I'll go to Barry Swain here. Barry, I mean, there was so much hype about the French, basically saying before the tournament, you look at their starting lineup, it's completely better than everybody else. That's still not in doubt. But in this tournament, it feels like with a lot of the bigger sides, it's quite a similar story, isn't it? That you could say about England, you could say about maybe Spain at times, that they haven't quite shown their best football yet, have they? In the 3 games they've played, they've had to show a lot of character and a lot of mental strength and a lot of, managing the game right. And that's what's been the real key thing for me in their 3 group games. Do you feel as though that we're going to see a better French side in the knockout stages in terms of going forward, more playing the way that they want to play?
Oh, it would help if you could unmute your mic, Barry.
I was waiting for you to sign language me there, Mike. I was going to say I was looking at the French squad in front of me here, and it's full of players that know how to win tournaments and know how to get to the final of tournaments. It's oozing in quality. Have we seen the best of Kylian Mbappe yet? No. I mean, he's impressed us, but he hasn't scored any goals, I don't think, has he? So
no, not yet.
Benzema has started to come good, and they've picked up 1 or 2 injuries, haven't they? I think Denya went off injured in the game. In the final group game, didn't he, against the Portuguese? It looks like his tournament might well be over. So they've picked up 1 or 2, French player injuries, but they've got so much quality. I think they'll come good in those big games when it really matters, and I wouldn't be surprised. They're my tip, and I wouldn't be surprised to see them going through all the way to the final.
Well, as you said, they have got players who've got tournament experience. A lot of that squad still there from the 26 were a part of the squad in 2018. The likes of Luca Hernandez, Antoine Griezmann, Kylian Mbappe, Hugo Lloris. That's just a few of those names. There's so many names you can think about if you see their squad in front of you that are serial winners, not just at country level, but at club level. The other player you were thinking of being injured was, of course, Ousmane Dembele is actually ruled out for the rest of the tournament. So a bit of a blow for the French in terms of options from the bench. Jack, you watched the Germans last night against Hungary. Going into the tournament, Joachim Löw was very, under pressure from the German media. They weren't convinced he was going to get the job done. It is his farewell tournament. I mean, he's had 15 years at the helm, which, is absolutely remarkable given the shelf life of managers these days. What did you make of them last night? Because they certainly made life very hard for themselves, as Hungary certainly really gave a good account of themselves, didn't they? Not just last night, but throughout the tournament, I might as well add as well.
Well, I mean, for a long time, Germany were going out, weren't they? And it was going to be consecutive tournaments for the first time ever that they didn't qualify for the groups, for the knockout stages. So they weren't great, has to be said. I mean, looking at it against France, it was a tight game, but they didn't create anywhere near enough. And then the Portugal game, it was the Germans are here now, because Goossens was fantastic, Kimmich was fantastic, Kroos dominated the game. Portugal maybe allowed them too much, but all of the goals were essentially the same, crosses in from the box either side, and it looked like the wing backs were this is how Germany's gonna get far in the tournament. Then last night, Hungary let Hummels have the ball as much as he wanted. They let Rudiger have the ball as much as he wanted. They let Ginter have the ball as much as he wanted. And then as soon as it came into the wing backs, the press forced the wing backs back. So it was very rare that Goossens or Kimmich got any crosses in. Gnabry had to drop so deep to come and get the ball. Sane shouldn't have stayed on the pitch for 90 minutes. He was absolutely dreadful. Kai Havertz played okay, got his goal, but then subbed straight away. It was the subs who made the difference for the Germans in the end. Goretzka, who has been complaining about not getting a start, comes on, gets a goal that ultimately sends his team through, and now they play England. But Germany last night had so much possession, but yeah, Hungary set up so well, defended well, and they countered brilliantly. And I felt really bad for Hungary at the end. I thought they deserved to win the game, really. Ultimately, I suppose you can say the German quality shone through, but I'm not scared of the Germans. This is not one of the best German sides there's ever been. It's clear. I mean, Hummels hadn't played for 5 years before the 2 friendlies before this tournament for his country. So they're he's brought him back to try and sort out the defense. There's clearly some problems there. I mean, that second goal they conceded was dreadful. Neuer, don't know what he's doing for that one. Just a long, like a ball over the top. He gets in between Sane and Hummels, nods it in. So yeah, I mean, from an English point of view, I think Germany's not a bad draw. And I wasn't that impressed with Germany, apart from in the Portugal game, where if you allow them the time and space, they're going to cause you problems.
Yeah, the wing-backs, Gosens and Kimmich, were really, really good against Portugal. And it almost feels like that's their real outlet in this tournament, isn't it? You get the ball out to them, that's where the goals or the chances are going to come by. Gnabry's been quiet so far. Muller and Havertz, yes, Havertz scored last night and obviously did play fairly well against Portugal, but so far they've really yet to leave their mark in this tournament for the Mannschaft. I'm going to go to Luke about Portugal because obviously there was a lot of talk about them in this tournament about how they were going to fare. They're European champions. You know, against Hungary, they played as something slightly different to what they usually play because they usually play against big sides. They usually sit off, don't they? They're very, you know, they rely on Ronaldo and they use their pace on the break. You know, when you've got Bernardo Silva, you've got Jota, you've got Ronaldo in that side, anything is possible, isn't it? And obviously against the French, against the Germans, they did look a little bit at times, particularly against Germany, very, very suspect with dealing with, you know, wing backs and wingers who play very, very wide. How did you assess them in this tournament? And do you feel as though that they are, even though their squad on paper looks a lot better than 5 years ago, do you think as a team they're a lot better than what they were? Or do you think they've actually downgraded in that sense, you could say?
I'm still waiting for them to properly click. I mean, they lost Cancelo right at the start of the tournament for COVID, so I think that's not helped. I think Ruben Diaz has looked very shaky without John Stones next to him, which I thought I'd never be uttering, but okay. They are very, very reliant now on Ronaldo because I'm still waiting for Jota to do something. I'm still waiting for Bernardo Silva to do something in this tournament. But again, they have played Germany and they have played France. I mean, they're coming up against Belgium next, so
yeah,
we'll see how they handle that one. But I'm still waiting for them to properly click together as a team. I think there's a lot of individuals, but they're not gelled yet as a squad, I don't think.
No, that's a fair point to make. And I think obviously last night, Fernando Santos made a bold call, didn't he? Put Renato Sanchez in the team ahead of Bruno Fernandes. And what a decision that was. Renato Sanchez was actually really good last night for Portugal. Of course, going forward in the first half, he was really, really good. He found the little areas of space, played good balls through to Ronaldo, looking for him anyway. In second half, he had to be very different in terms of his running round off the ball, defending, helping his defence. I thought he was absolutely magnificent tonight. And it just goes to show that, you know, the unsung heroes of Portugal, the ones that really stand out. Pepe at 38, the oldest player in the tournament, is still going strong. You know, Rui Patricio made an unbelievable save against Paul Pogba, and then Griezmann within a few seconds. You know, that's save of the tournament. We've only got to the group stages, so you know, it just shows that Portugal's sort of older players can really still at times do the job for them. And look at Ronaldo, 5 goals in the tournament for him already. It just goes to show how good he is. And of course, he broke that record during the tournament of being the European Championships record goal scorer. I'll move on to Hungary as I go to Nicholas. So there's a comment from JST Killer again. He says Renato Sanchez, apart from Ronaldo, has been their best player because his strength and get the ball. And to be fair, that is something I cannot disagree with. I think Renato Sanchez certainly does hold his opponent off well. He certainly can handle the physical side of the game as well as the attacking and technical side. Nicholas, you covered Hungary in the first game against Portugal. It nearly got off to the best start for them. They, of course, did think they went 1-0 up because of a goal from from Sabat Schön, which got ruled out for VAR, rightly so. Lost 3-0 against Portugal in a 5-minute swing at the end of the game. They took points out of France and Germany. So you've got to say Marcos Rossi's side, you know, they've got to be really, really proud of how they fared, haven't they?
Yes, they really should be proud with how they did to draw with France and to hold their own against the likes of Portugal and Germany is something that they should really be proud of. I mean, like Finland, Hungary is very much a football unknown, but they did really well.
Yes, they certainly did do very well indeed. Of course, the days of Puskás, Kokšić, Hidegkuti very much gone for Hungary. And of course, they certainly should feel happy given the fact Dominik Szoboszlai was injured. Their best player, Leipzig's, of course, creative dynamo, was not involved in the tournament. They should feel very, very happy indeed. So that's the group stages wrapped up. We now move on to the round of 16, of course, and this is where the tournament does really start to get interesting. Of course, we're through the group stage review. We're now onto the knockout stage preview. Thank you for your comments coming in to us, of course. And we are on JB Sports. We're on both the Commentary Hub YouTube channels. We're also on Periscope. We're on commentary live on Twitch, Mike Harneman's YouTube, and Russ Vernon's Twitch. Of course, Russ Vernon, if you don't know, is on the top left corner, and Mike Harneman is just above me, as I mentioned, who's on his YouTube channel. Keep the comments flowing. If you've got a certain question for a pundit, let us know. If you've got a general question, then feel free to jump in. So the round of 16 begins on Saturday, and it begins in Amsterdam. Wales take on Denmark. Wales second in Group A against Denmark, who was second in Group B. Nicholas James will be the commentator for that. So I'll go to him in a minute. I'll go to Barry Swain first. We've spoken about both sides, but if we're looking in terms of a tactical analysis sort of pre-game, from what you've seen of both these sides, how would you assess it, and who would you say is the favourite going into this?
Oh, that's a good question. This is very, very even. Danes were very impressive in their third group match. It might just give them the edge. But, you know, when it comes to character and guts that's been shown in this tournament, you know, these are probably the two gutsiest, most gelled squads in the tournament. And I think it's going to be a cracking game. I can't wait for this one. The Danes will have support there. I don't think the Welsh are going to have so much support in Amsterdam because of restrictions, unfortunately. That might just play on them a little bit. But, you know, Wales have got those world-class players, the likes of Bale and Ramsey, that might just edge it. You just don't know. It's all about on the day. I think this is going to be a fascinating, because I wouldn't want to call it. I really wouldn't want to call this one.
No, it is very, very close to call indeed. It does just feel like it is one of those games in the 8 that are in the round of 16 that is really too close to call. And you could actually fancy either side to win. Nicholas, you're doing the game for us. Obviously, we've spoken about Wales in terms of how it feels like they've got the spirit of 2016 very much coursing through their veins. You've got Denmark, an exciting side who many feel will be the dark horses. They're buoyed by the fact that Christian Eriksen, of course, is sort of okay now. And, of course, they've come through that experience. It feels like it's two very, you know, different nations in terms of footballing styles, isn't it, that's going to be played on Saturday? For the people that don't know how both these sides play, just sort of give a little bit of a lowdown in terms of what you think on the pitch is how both sides are going to play.
I think this match could go either way. I'd see it as a bit of a flip side to it. Denmark, very much, like you say, the dark horses for this tournament. Wales, Wales could do really well in this game, but if I was to really go for it and bet on it, I would have to possibly go for a narrow Denmark win. Although I would say Wales could hold them very close, but realistically, I think it could go either way.
Yeah, it does certainly have that feel, as I just mentioned when obviously I was asking the question to Barry. And then the second game on the evening is in London at Wembley Stadium. John Stuttard is on the mic for Italy against Austria. John, you've spoken about Austria beforehand. You've spoken about Italy as well. You're pretty much in the mindset, aren't you, that Italy are going to be too strong for their opponents?
Absolutely. I'm also going to talk about the last 16 as a whole, because it's going to be my last contribution, of course, to the evening before I go. Touching on the first game, the game I've got, yeah, I will stick by what I'm saying. I think Italy should be too strong. It all depends on how Austria played, whether they're big game players like your Alabas and your Arnautovic's all turn up. I think it's going to be a tough one for them. Italy, as I said, they've been the great entertainers. 3 in the first game, 3 in the second game, which I covered against the Swiss. They only beat Wales by a goal to 0, but it looked a very comfortable one. I know Wales missed a couple of great opportunities, Gareth Bale mainly, but I thought Italy was still comfortable despite that. So I would fancy Italy to get through that. As for some of the other games, one game I'm particularly looking forward to is, of course, the England-Germany one. I just hope that, I'm just a word on England. Not really been impressed. I don't agree with Barry or John Kane, actually, that 2 holding midfielders are the answer. I think we need one, and I think that person, with all due respect, should be Declan Rice. I think we need to be a bit more bolder attacking-wise. I think Saka's a big plus. I thought Scotland were just awful. I've had my say on that, obviously. But against the Czech Republic, they were much better. I thought, as I say, Saka was a big plus. And I think he needs to start against the Germans. The Germans should have gone, as for the Germans, they should have gone out last night without a shadow of a doubt. And Hungary was so near to really blowing that side of the draw wide open. But as far as England's concerned, that's the only worry I have with England with that draw. If we get past the Germans, we've got a favourable quarter-final draw, possibly Wales or Holland in the semi-finals. So England have got every chance, but we have to beat. Obviously, we've got to go and beat the Germans. But I would expect Spain to do well in their last 16. I expect France to be there. Portugal might just get through, but I'm just a bit worried that their side, now that they're much older and they're too reliant on Ronaldo, that could prove the case. But I will make one final point about that tournament as an old Matt before I leave you all tonight. The tournament, as regards entertainment and a good attacking football, has been absolutely phenomenal. As much, you know what, it's exceeded my own expectations of this. We've had 2 0-0s over the course of the tournament. Let's hope the group stages can live up to all that's gone before it, and let's hope we get royally entertained. And of course, I'll hopefully be royally entertained by Italy against Austria on Saturday, and I'm really looking forward to that one.
I was going to say off the back of that, credit to VAR. They've got VAR right as well, haven't they?
Yeah,
they have, haven't they? Yes,
Most definitely.
Yeah, they have.
Yeah, so VAR's been good, although it did catch me out in the Spain game the other day, but it's been pretty good. But that's it from me, guys. Have a fan. Enjoyed. I'll enjoy.
I was just going to say,
show.
JB, before you run off as well, Southgate, if you see him wearing a suit, we're going to win. That's right, isn't it?
That's correct, yes. But he needs to put his waistcoat on as well.
JB,
All the best, JB.
I hope to be
Thank
back
you.
on Saturday in time to put my waistcoat on and be your summariser in that game on.
I might put mine on as well.
Yeah, we
Good
both
night, all.
Cheers, JB.
Good night, everybody.
All the best, JB. Take care, mate.
Thank you.
Good night, all.
Yeah, thank you, JB, for your contributions tonight throughout the sort of group stage review, knockout preview show. So I do really appreciate it. And of course, Luke Turton has obviously bid farewell as well. Thank you for his comments as well. We do really appreciate it. Of course, you will be hearing his voice on the channel very, very soon and potentially throughout the rest of the Euros. Who knows? Next game, of course, we move on to Sunday's action. The Netherlands against Czech Republic. Group C winners, the Netherlands against third in Group D, the Czech Republic in Budapest, of course. It's going to be a full house in Budapest once again. Of course, it is the only stadium that has got a full capacity of supporters. Jack Cunningham. Netherlands, it feels like, will just overpower the Czechs, but we spoke about how the Czechs are quite plucky, difficult to play. Do you feel as though that they will be making life very, very difficult for the Dutch in terms of how they set up and how they will try and just carry the longevity of this game and just try and lean it towards extra time, perhaps?
Yeah, I think it's for the Czechs. It's going to be literally just about trying to drag it out for as long as you possibly can. Try and manufacture a half chance for Sheik. I mean, he's already proven that he can. Well, he obviously scored from 50 yards out, didn't he? Then he got a penalty and a header as well. He had no service against England whatsoever. But I mean, Czech Republic. You got Souček, you got Soufal, who I think have been really impressive as you would expect. Both really good. Yankto, I like the left winger. He's been good as well. They have some strong players. But Holland, Netherlands have surprised me. I thought they'd really struggle. But they've been incredible going forward, especially Dumfries down that right wing, absolute powerhouse. So could come down to that left hand side. Virgil against Dumfries, he really struggled against Saka, didn't he, on Tuesday night now? So I mean, I do think in the end the Netherlands will have too much for the Czechs. And then obviously we'll see, we'll have to see what sort of happens with that. But, Wijnaldum's been fantastic as well, hasn't he? He plays a totally different role for Holland, as he used to for Liverpool. He's much more box to box, gets goals. Depay's been brilliant for them as well. So I think Holland will have too much. I'm going to go for a 2-0 Netherlands win.
So it feels like at the moment it's going to be Italy, maybe Denmark just squeezing through against Wales and the Netherlands. So that feels like it's going to be the three sides going through. I'm just going to ask John Kane his opinion. Obviously, you've spoken a bit about the Dutch with him tonight. Do you feel as though that the Czechs could really upset the apple cart in this one? Because you do usually get a game in the Euro knockout rounds. We saw England be on the receiving end of it 5 years ago against Iceland. Do you maybe feel that the Czech Republic can beat the Dutch?
Very much so. I'm going for the Czech for this game.
Wow.
I think they will shock the Dutch. The Dutch have been playing very good football, I have to admit. But like I mentioned earlier, I don't think the Dutch have played very good teams in that first group, and they are going to struggle against the Czech. And the Czech, as Barry said earlier, I believe it was Barry, who said our group were a tough group. You know, we had Croatia, England, and obviously Scotland, but if you take Scotland out of it, the three were very strong teams. And even though England beat the Czech, it was only 1-0. And yes, the performance of England was a bit better. However, I still think the Czech has got much more to give. And I personally I can see the Czech actually beating Holland in the next round.
Very interesting prediction from John K. Nen. And what wraps Sunday's action up is Belgium against Portugal in Seville at the Estadio La Cartuja, where Belgium were group winners in Group B, looked really impressive during the group stages and sort of the three matches they played. Portugal, as we've sort of mentioned, were still needing to really show what they're made of. Of course, it is a very different side to the one that featured 5 years ago and won it in France. Russ Vernon, this is a clash where you've got the best side in the world against the Portuguese side, trying to use their sort of players that have carried them through tournaments in the past, your Ronaldos, your Pepes, your Patricios, your people like that, you know, your emerging talent. Joao Felix has barely even played a minute in this tournament so far. How do you see this game going? And do you think maybe Portugal could just be a little bit more tactically wiser, a bit more smarter than Belgium?
I think it'll be a very close game, this one, Matt. I think it could go the distance. I think it could go all the way to the penalties. And then it's anybody's guess. As we know, penalties are a lottery in any competition, even in the championship, even in the playoffs that we've seen over the past few years in the EFL. And I think this game, it'll be a tale of who's going to score more. Will it be Romelu Lukaku or will it be Cristiano Ronaldo? And I think both are going to score 2 each in this game. And it's going to go to penalties. And then, like I said, anybody's game, I think it's going to be 1-1 at 90 minutes, 2-2 after 120, and then we're going to get a penalty shootout. So I think we're going to have a very good game and good end-to-end game in this one, Matt.
Very interesting. I'll be covering the game Sunday night for the Commentary Hub. That game, of course, as I mentioned, is being played in Seville. We'll now move on to Croatia versus Spain. Mike Harneman is here and he's going to tell us a bit about it. Of course, I'm going to throw to him now for this game that he will be covering in Copenhagen, the Telia Parken Stadium. Mike, Croatia finished second. Spain finished second. Met each other at the Euros 5 years ago. Croatia triumphed. Very different Croatia side, very different Spanish side. So it almost feels like, to me, it's going to be a case of, you know, which style comes out really on top. And you could speak about Ross saying Lukaku against Ronaldo. Maybe it might just be down to maybe, I don't know, looking at maybe Modric against the rest of the Spanish midfield. It almost feels like if Modric is stopped, Croatia is stopped, doesn't it?
I think you got that right. I think, you know, it's not just Modric really, though, because Kovacic and even Brozovic as well, you know, played their part. You know, Perisic as well is another one that, you know, can come good in, you know, key moments. But then if you look at the Spanish side, they've got, you know, the likes of Busquets that's back in now. He's been a big plus for them. And then it's all about Moreno, you know, whether he's going to be favoured to Morata and whether, you know, they might both play together or whether Morata will be on the bench or, you know, Moreno will be the one that maybe is used more of an impact player. I'm not too sure, but I'm looking forward to this game nonetheless. And I do think that it's going to be a really close game, a tight game. And I'm sort of favouring Croatia to nick it in extra time 2-1 personally. So, yeah.
Yeah, it does have that vibe, doesn't it? Being a real tight affair. Barry, I mean, this one is in Copenhagen and the Spanish showed against Slovakia what the Spanish sides of what I certainly remember growing up. I think Jack can certainly reminisce about that, just how good they were with the likes of Xavi in the SD. Yes, they don't quite have those individual players, but they are so capable as a team of turning on at any given moment. Croatia can beat anybody. We saw that in the World Cup 3 years ago. I don't want to keep trying to refer to them from that, but of course it is quite a good example to use, given they did go all the way to the final. Does it feel like that it might just be what the Spanish have had to deal with in the last few games, in terms of, you know, a lot of the teams sitting back trying to counter-attack and them trying to outpass them and just catch a weakness in the defence? Do you maybe feel that Croatia will be slightly different in that respect?
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, it's a tough one to call, this one. I don't think Spain have been anywhere near their best up until, you know, the final group game. And they've hit the form and they've hit the goals. You know, are they totally convincing? I don't think I've said it already in this show, haven't I? I don't think they've had a real test yet.
No, they haven't.
And Croatia, you know, again, I've said this in the show already, to come through one of the toughest groups. I think they're a well-organised side. I think they're dangerous going forward. And I just wouldn't want to call this one. I'm not totally convinced by the Spaniards, and I wouldn't be surprised if Croatia are the team that go through to the quarterfinal.
Well, the Spanish are a team in transition, but will they make their way to the quarterfinals? We will find out with that game, of course, being played Monday at 5 o'clock. And then, of course, we're 5 down. We've got 3 to go in this preview for the round of 16. Jack Cunningham's on the mic for France versus Switzerland, of course. We spoke briefly about Switzerland. We spoke about France, how it almost feels like maybe they haven't quite come out yet, not really shown their worth, maybe flex their muscles. Barry rightly alluded to, I think everybody's got the same point, that Kylian Mbappe probably hasn't quite turned up yet. We're starting to see the best of Benzema, why he was brought back into the French fold. Do you maybe think that the French are just going to be too strong for Vladimir Petkovic's side on Monday evening?
Yeah, I mean, Switzerland, you know, they probably should have won that first game against Wales, to be honest. You know, take the lead and then terrible defending for that Kiefer Moore goal. After that, they had the offside goal, but they had Danny Ward made 2 unbelievable saves from what I remember. So they should have won that one. Then they were hammered by Italy. Obviously, then impressive performance to get through against Turkey. So they did enough. But I look at that Swiss side and I just think Xhaka in the midfield against Pogba, Kante. He's going to be absolutely overwhelmed, isn't he? Really. And then it comes down to, obviously, it might suit Switzerland a bit more to not have so much of the ball, because they obviously play a back 5 with their wing back, so that might actually allow them to maybe get into the game a bit more. But I think France weren't amazing against Germany, got the job done. Against Hungary, I know Hungary got the draw, but France definitely had enough chances to win the game. Golaci made some brilliant saves. Benzema missed an unbelievable chance in the first half. Mbappe should have scored as well. And then, obviously, the Portugal game last night was just a mad one. I think the only thing you can say about France is defensively, they don't look amazing. They've got clearly a mistake in them. But I think I said at the start they were my favourites to win the tournament, so I can't have them going out against Switzerland. So I'm going to say, obviously, France going through. I think it'd be comfortable. I think they'll win 3-0. I think finally Mbappe will get his first goal.
Yeah, that's what we wanted to see, isn't it? And I mean, you made a very good point about the Swiss midfield. You know, Xhaka and Remo Freuler were very overwhelmed against the Italians. You know, Locatelli, Barella and Jorginho just completely did a number on the pair of them, didn't they, for the Swiss? And it just felt like it was way too much for them in that game, of course, which they did lose 3-0 in Rome 8 days ago. Nicholas Jones, I mean, obviously, you touched in on that point I just made about Xhaka and Remo Freuler being overwhelmed. It almost does feel like with the French, you know, yes, you've got Kante in the team. You've obviously got Rabiot who can play there. Last night, obviously, they put in there Corentin Tolisso, almost played as a winger, but he's a central midfielder by trade. Paul Pogba for the French in this tournament's really stepped up. He's made some really good assists. Against Germany, laid that beautiful ball on for Hernandez. He played a lovely ball into Mbappe, which, of course, he got fouled, which shouldn't have been given as a penalty, but that's obviously a different matter entirely. Do you feel as though, first and foremost, the Swiss have got to be good in the midfield? Of course, you've got Mbappe, you've got Benzema, we've touched upon, but they can't play like they did against Italy, can they? Because it could literally be a real horrible evening they could endure in Bucharest.
Yes, Switzerland. They've got to be really, really good against France. because, as we know, France have got great star quality players, and as you also mentioned, Paul Pogba seems to have raised his game. So Switzerland need to work really hard and graft at it, and possibly hope for a miracle if they are to beat France. Because I can only see one winner out of it, and it has to be Le Bleu for me.
Yeah, it does feel like Le Bleu are going to be the overwhelming winners in this one. Now we come on to the big one. England versus Germany. I don't need to tell you about the history lessons involved in that, of course. As England will be playing in London, 45,000 crowd. It has cranked up ever since, of course. Of course, they will be hosting the semi-finals and the final there in a month's time or so. Well, less than a month now, of course. I'll go to John Kane, who's covering this game for us on the commentary hub. John, obviously, we've seen Germany. They've played 3-5-2 in this team, or 3-4-2-1 in the tournament, with inside forwards and Kimmich and Gosens being the go-to men for the Germans in terms of creating and, you know, setting the chances up. The most important thing is, do you think England will continue with the four at the back, or do you think they might tactically sort of go similarly with what the Germans are playing?
I mean, first of all, I really hope that Harry Kane turns up for that game, because I'm not saying as a Spurs fan, I'm saying as a football fan, as an English fan, Harry Kane need to turn up, because the German team, regardless of their performance in this tournament so far, which hasn't been really a German, as we always expect, the Germans level to be very high. But the one thing that the Germans always had, even with the worst teams they ever had in history, is German efficiency. It's a very well-known thing. They're very efficient. Even from a bad team, they can still do their jobs to the best of they can. And with that, I really hope that Gareth Southgate and that will stick to have Declan Rice and Calvin Phillips in that holding midfield role, because you don't know what German team is going to turn up on that day. And let's not forget that at the end of the day, we actually talking about a game. It's like talking about the two Milan teams against each other, or Madrid, Barcelona, or Arsenal, Spurs. This is actually the same thing. Doesn't matter how good or bad the other team is. This is like a derby, you know. This is an arch rival teams. So England could be won all their games beforehand, and Germany just struggle to get to the next round. It does not mean automatically that will beat Germany easily, because the Germans have got a point to prove, and so has English got a point to prove. So it's not going to be easy, and I'm not predicting that. The only thing I hope that it doesn't go to penalties, because we know our luck with penalties when it comes against the Germans. But I do hope that he'll stick with the two midfield roles, as I mentioned earlier, because you just don't know what German team's going to turn up.
No, you don't. And that is a very, very big word, and a very, very good point you've made. German efficiency. They seem to know the real key moments in tournaments and big games. They just seem to know how to do it. That is what has really stood out about the Germans, especially under Joachim Löw in the latter sort of stages of his German career. When they've needed to get a win and they've needed to just do whatever it takes, they seem to get over the line. And my next question, I'm going to lay it to Mike Harneman. Obviously, Wembley's increased capacity. I think it's at least over sort of 20,000 more. 45,000 is going to be due for the game at Wembley. It feels like with the Germans, any occasion, with the majority of the supporters being English, let's say 90% of the ground, maybe even more, it feels like with the Germans, they won't get overawed by that by any sense. They will thrive off that. They've played in big venues before. They're very, very used to that. And it's going back to what John Kane was saying about efficiency and just dealing with the occasion. Do you think what I'm trying to say is going to be the opposite of what you think, in terms of they might get a bit scared by it? Or do you think that they will just shut it out completely and just, you know, play the way that they want to play and almost completely shut the crowd out to one extent?
I'm hoping that England can, you know, come on and actually put on a really good performance. I want to see Saka from the start. I want to see Grealish from the start. You know, I want to see as much attacking option as we can possibly get into that side. You know, I want to see Sterling. Probably not, you know, this is going to be controversial. The fact he scored our 2 goals, I don't really want Sterling in that side. I'd rather have a Jadon Sancho maybe, or a Phil Foden, somebody else that can kind of offer a little bit more. Because I think bar the goals, Raheem Sterling, you know, doesn't create as much or isn't as effective as much as some of those other players. And, you know, it has to be about Harry Kane. You want to see Harry Kane perform. But yeah, you know, in regards to Germany, I think Germany will go into that game full of confidence. You know, they know they can beat anybody. The fact they turned it on against Portugal, and they just got to kind of hope that the complacency that they kind of allowed into their game yesterday doesn't kind of creep in. And I see it being a really interesting game. I think it's going to be a real close one, and I'm confident. I'm pretty confident England can get the job done. So I'm not going to change my mind from what I said yesterday. So I think England will just about nick it by the odd goal.
Well, of course, this isn't the strongest of German sides that we have seen in terms of the star names. But of course, it goes back to what John Kane was saying. It's efficiency. It's still knowing how to get the job done. And you have to say they probably go one up in England in that respect. Just those key tournament games, they just seem to know how to do it. Big games, they just seem to get it through. But of course, it is just far too close to call. We've said it about Wales and Denmark. We've said it about Croatia, Spain. What we do think is, though, that England, Germany will be the game that really lives up to the hype in all the previous games that have happened in the past. 1966, 1970, 1990, 96, 2000, of course. We're hoping that we can have something similar this time.
I'll take a 5-1 again, that's for sure.
Well, we had that in 2001 at the Olympiastadion in Munich. So, of course, we can dream, but let's be realistic. I don't think we're going to get 5 against the Germans.
Nah.
But if I'm wrong, I'll eat my hat. Let's move to the last game in the group. No, I'm joking. I won't eat my hat. I'll move on to the last game in the group. Russ Vernon's going to cover Sweden against Ukraine. Sweden have actually probably surprised a few people in terms of how defensively solid they've been. They, as Mike alluded to and probably rightly said, they had the best defensive performance of any game in the group, shutting Spain out for 90 minutes, drawing 0-0 in Seville. Ukraine haven't really impressed many people, as Jack Cunningham did allude to. I think it was a very, very good point he made. It doesn't have the makings to be a classic, does it? But it almost just feels like that Sweden, if they just get that goal to go in front, it's just going to stay at 1-0, isn't it? And it might be over very early before it's even really got going. Yeah,
absolutely, Matt. And I think if you look at the way Sweden played defensively, especially against Spain, no matter how many times Spain got forward, they couldn't get past our back line, and also they couldn't get past the brick wall in net, Robin Olsen as well. And I think if he has another fantastic game, like in majority of the games he had for Everton last season in the Premier League, when he was on loan at Everton from Roma, Robin Olsen, I think Sweden are going to go through in this one. I think it may be a tie game, and I'm edging towards a 2-1 win for Sweden, and I think Yarmolenko will score for Ukraine, but Forsberg and Victor Lindelof who will get the goals for Sweden, and Sweden will go through. I think it will be a Lindelof header in the 89th minute, which will see Sweden into the
Do you want to get any more precise?
Yeah, I'd love to know if you've seen into the future, if you've been in a crystal ball or something. Because Lindelof in the 89th minute is the exact thing that I would not have expected to come out of your mouth. First of all, left field goal scorer, and secondly, the minute as well. That is very precise.
Yeah.
So if it actually comes off, I'm going to ask you to wet the lottery numbers for me. So
comes from a corner,
yeah,
exactly. Or a free
is
kick. Yeah.
Yeah, is it a corner or free kick? Is it from the left or the right?
It's going to be a corner.
Might be the
It's going
centre.
to be a corner from the left.
Sebastian Larsson then.
Yeah.
Larson from the corner.
Well, put it, if it does come off, I think everyone is going to ask you what the lottery numbers are going to be on the Saturday.
Yeah, bang on.
We're going to be millionaires. That's what we're going to be looking at. So if Ross is right, he's going to come off as a serious genius. But if he's wrong, then he's going to sink, isn't he? So let's hope he's not right now.
Normally with my predictions, I'm normally wrong, but hopefully for this one, I am spot on.
What was the major
well, let's just
tournament?
for your sake, Lindelof scores, so we can
What
obviously.
was the major tournament where they had the octopus that predicted the score.
2010.
I know we've got Russ Vernon.
Yeah.
2010.
Euro 2020. Go to Russ Vernon.
Well, you just find a Leeds player. So you've got a Wales player for Tyler Roberts. No one for Denmark. The Wales are going to win. You've got England, Germany,
Calvin
Robin
Phillips.
Koch,
Yeah.
Calvin Phillips. Who's going to win? You go like that.
Calvin. I'll go with the Yorkshire Palo, Calvin Phillips.
So that, of course, is the round of 16. Now, if you look further ahead in the tournament, which we are going to do because this is a knockout preview, Belgium, Portugal, the winners of that will face Italy or Austria in Munich. So, of course, judging by what we've said, we think that Italy will go through, and that Belgium, we think, will probably squeeze past Portugal, but of course that is very, very close to cause. It has been for a lot of the games. And then the second quarterfinal will be France, as we suspect. Probably, you'd have to say maybe Spain, but of course don't deny Croatia their place in the quarterfinals. That'll be played in St. Petersburg, both of them on the 2nd of July. Then the 3rd of July, England or Germany, that is seriously too close to call, against either Sweden, is what the overriding feeling does feel like amongst this podcast. And then the Dutch will take on either Wales or Denmark in Baku. Incidentally, England will play against England or Germany, I should say, will play against Sweden in Rome. If you look at those quarterfinals, I'm going to go to Barry first, and then I'll go to John Kane on this. We've got Belgium versus Italy potentially. We've got France versus Spain potentially. England or Germany against Sweden. The Netherlands against Denmark. It really just feels like the latter stage of the tournament could see an abundance of goals, doesn't it?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, how strong is that one half? And I think I alluded to that earlier on in the show as well. But, Belgium against Italy, I mean, arguably the two best sides in the tournament so far. And, France against maybe Spain, another cracking game. And, when you look at, if England could overcome Germany, it would be a tough game, either against Ukraine or Sweden. But, it's a winnable game. And there's some great games lined up there. And you wouldn't want to call it, would you? You wouldn't want to call it. There's usually a team or a couple of teams that you fancy, and Belgium, Italy might fall into that. One of them's going to go by the wayside at the quarterfinal stage. So it's a tough one to call. Really tough one to call. But there's some really good games there. Hopefully some really attractive football, loads of goals. Really excited. Can't wait to see this tournament progress to the business end.
Yeah, absolutely right. We are looking forward to it as much as everybody else. And John, just sort of kind of asking the same question to Barry. I mean, obviously, you look at it on paper, you could potentially have Belgium aside who attack for fun. You've got Italy being so dominant and so relentless, potentially in the knockout. You've got France as well, who, as we know, have got serious quality in their team. You've got Spain potentially, of course, with a treble winner as manager. I mean, not many managers can say they've won the Champions League in the European Championship sort of coaching list. You've got the Netherlands potentially going through, Germany or England. It almost just feels like that this is, a tournament where one of the big boys really does get their hands on this trophy. And it's not going to be what we've seen usually where Portugal won it based on defending. It might just feel like someone's going to win it based on being the best footballing side and the most entertaining and the most flawless, doesn't it?
Absolutely. It has been very, very entertaining, which I wasn't really expecting to be as entertaining as this because of due to the COVID reasons and obviously limited spaces for fans and stadiums. And you would think that would actually take away a bit of the bri off the football, but it's actually been very, very brilliant. And it's great to watch every single game that we covered. Actually, I mean, before the tournament started, and I actually did put Scotland as my dark horse, so that's out of the window. And I put Portugal to beat France in the final. And from seeing France, I think they are a very, very good team, and I'm not doubting that. But I agree. I believe it's Jack who mentioned it. There is a bit issues and a bit few holes on that defense that I actually can see it can be exposed if you got the right manager. To look at it, it's not really that tight as people think. But going forward, sometimes if you look back at the Spurs days when Ozzy Ardiles and he had the famous five, send 7 players down up front and defend with a 3. You score 3, we score 4, and things like that. France can actually do that, but still that defense is very, very troubling. But even though I've always said that Portugal are my favourites to go through, I've actually liked Sweden. And the reason being is because when I'm actually watching Sweden, it's like watching Denmark in 1992. The style of football that they are playing is like what Denmark did in back in 92. I know it doesn't mean they're going to win it again, but I actually got a weird feeling that they are actually going to be the one. If they stick to what they're doing at the moment in all their matches, they actually have a very, very good chance of beating the big guns in this tournament and end up winning it. They're really just like Denmark, but they're just wearing different colours.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you're very, very right in your observation. Of course, they wear yellow. Denmark wear sort of dark red. But no, that's a very, very good point you've made about Sweden in terms of they are a very well-drilled team, very well coached, a side that, very much go against what you wouldn't associate with football being sort of, we want the beautiful game, but they, of course, play to their strengths. Of course, they're missing Zlatan Ibrahimovic, but they've got Isak up front, who I think has been absolutely superb. They've got Forsberg in there as well. I'm just going to go to Nicholas Jones, actually, just on a certain point. We spoke about France. We spoke about Portugal, about sort of being the two big hitters in this tournament. But is there anyone for you, do you think, that's going to win it? I mean, Belgium haven't won it before. We've obviously not seen England win it before. Obviously, John Kane spoke about Sweden. You watched them yesterday. So I'm just going to ask sort of two questions. Who do you think's been the most impressive for you in this tournament? And I mean, you sort of went with the idea of France winning it, but do you maybe think that now we're going to see a new name on the Henri Delaunay Trophy?
There could well be a new winner because I think another one of my favourites, given their world ranking, has to be Belgium. I reckon they could be a dark horses to win this one as well. Although I wouldn't rule out the likes of Denmark, who we covered. But it would be a miracle if England made it through to the final. But I'm still going to stick to my guns and go with Belgium.
Fair enough. I love your hope that England won't go through, so let's hope Gareth Southgate's not watching this end. But no, I mean, obviously, it's a fair assumption that Nicholas has made that Belgium do have a really good chance. It maybe just feels like now that this golden generation that is so often a tag that gets thrown around international football, that it might feel like it's going to click for them. I mean, Jack, I'm going to go to you, then I'll go to Mike on a different team entirely. Does it feel like maybe for Belgium that this might be the start of something special for them and they're finally going to fulfill their potential on the international stage?
Well, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it the hard way, aren't they? Because they're on the horrible side of the draw. So Italy, Portugal first up and then potentially Italy. So if they're going to do it,
then maybe France if they get to the semi-finals as well.
Exactly. So it's going to be tough, isn't it? If they're going to do it. But Lukaku is in unbelievable form. He's just looks in the peak of his life. I mean, everything he's touching's turned into goals. I loved his goal against Finland, the turn and shot. It was like that game, Jumpers for Goalposts, the turn and shot routine.
Yeah.
He rifled it in. I love that goal. And it's all going to be. It's obviously got De Bruyne, but it's probably the end of that of this golden generation. A lot of the players are really, really old. I mean, Van Malen. Can't believe he's even still playing. Vertonghen, Alderweireld, etc. So this is probably their last chance with this group of players. Although Doku and etc. do look really good. They've got the young players coming through. But Belgium, if they're going to do it, they're going to do it the hard way. You'd think if they do beat Portugal, then they beat Italy, and then they beat France, then they would probably go on to win whoever they play. So it's going to be tough for them. But when you've got a player like Lukaku and De Bruyne who link up so well together, you can't rule them out. So I think they'll beat Portugal. Actually, I think they'll beat Portugal, and then Italy. I don't know.
Yeah, as you mentioned, of course, you do think that Belgium will beat Portugal, and they are, as you mentioned, on a real horrible side of the draw. England have avoided that, so potentially, if they should beat Germany, then, of course, they beat either Sweden or Ukraine, and then should they beat either Wales or Denmark or Netherlands or Czech Republic, you'd probably imagine come up against either Belgium, Portugal, Italy, or you'd probably have to say France. But, of course, you can't rule out another side in Spain, can you, Mike? I mean, they've won it twice in the 21st century. 2008 was good. 2012 was impressive to do it again. Is this maybe now the start of where Spain start to come in this tournament and show what they're made of, given yesterday's performance where they probably made a statement, didn't they, and really showed that we're here, we're not going to mess around?
Yeah, I think Spain, you've got to be, have a little bit of a shout in this as well. Of course, yesterday, Ferran Torres come on and he scored within about 45 seconds, I believe, something like that, since he entered the fray, and he's a key player for them. Maybe he'll start in the game against Croatia, and he might have an impact. But it's going to be interesting to see what happens with Spain. Of course, as you mentioned, they have won it previously, and maybe Morata might actually, be saving his form, a little bit, maybe like Harry Kane for later on in the tournament, and maybe the Croatia game might be where he starts to come good, and Of course, Moreno as well up there supporting them. So there's always that option with Spain. They've been there, they've won it before, but it's just whether they can kind of keep it up now consistently. And in regards to Croatia as well, of course, Croatia were beaten finalists at the World Cup as well, so they're not coming up against any pushovers by any stretch of the imagination.
Well, yeah, you mentioned it there that Croatia won't be any pushovers and that Spain can easily do it. They've done it before, as I mentioned, 2008 and 2012 they did it, but of course it's a very different Spanish side to what that was 13 years ago. I'll go to Russ on England's chances. I mean, we're talking about the bigger hitters here. Of course, it could be completely like a Greece in 2004 where nobody you expect wins it, or Denmark in 92, as John was alluding to earlier when they won in Sweden, getting in at the last minute. England's chances, of course, they've got a nice favourable side of the draw. It doesn't necessarily count for anything, but is this finally the year where they get their hands on the Euros and then 55 years of hurt? For you, truthfully, or do you maybe think that we're not quite as good as the Belgians, the Italians, the French in this tournament, or the Portuguese, maybe that side of the draw?
I think he will. I said it in the last show that we did, the preview show before the group stage. You said it'd be England, Belgium in the final, and England to win it, and I'm sticking to that. And I think England, and I think it's coming home. And one thing I think reason why he's going to come home, because I think he may not do it, but for me, I change from Harry Kane and put Calvert-Lewin up front. And I think if we start with Calvert-Lewin up front in the game against Germany and the games after that, we will go on to win the tournament. I think because everyone knows how we play with Harry Kane up front. Kane always drops back. He can be out on the wing sometimes, like he were against Scotland, and Sterling was through the middle. And with Calvert-Lewin, he stays through the middle, but he doesn't, and he's always on the last shoulder of the defence. Whereas Kane is always coming deep, trying to link up the play. Whereas you want your striker to be on that last defender, ready to get in behind. I think if we have Calvert-Lewin, something a bit different up front, none of the teams will know how we'll be playing and how we're going to set up. He's coming home. You've heard it here first. England will win the Euros.
Well, it's a very interesting point you've made about Dominic Calvert-Lewin. I can see Jack Cunningham just below me shaking his head. Very, very clear to see. I mean, he's not quite happy about that.
No.
I think he probably still won't be when he goes to bed tonight. But Barry Swain, I'll throw to you. I mean, obviously, I'm going to ask you the question about who's been the most entertaining sort of attacking side for you. But there's a side that we've sort of briefly spoken about. I said, me and John before the preview of this, well, we said in the preview before the tournament again that we think Portugal are going to win it. Obviously, they aren't the most entertaining side, which I probably think you won't be saying. But in terms of their chances, they've done it before, some of this squad.
Yeah,
Ronaldo, Sanchez, Danilo Pereira, they've been there, they've done it, they know how to do it. You spoke about how the French have got players that can win the World Cup, but, Portugal have got it for the European Championships, haven't they, with some of the players in their current squad?
Yeah, foundations are there. There's no reason why that team can't challenge them. Obviously, they're playing Belgium in the next game, so if they're going to do it, they're going to do it the hard way, aren't they? Belgium and then Italy. So whoever comes through that little quadrant, you'd fancy them, wouldn't you? You wouldn't fancy Austria in that four, would you? But you never know. It's funny things have happened before. I think this tournament, and maybe in a roundabout way, I'm going to back up Russ Vernon here. In a roundabout way, I think this tournament is going to be won defensively, not offensively. And you look through this tournament, Belgium's back four, question marks. Portugal's back four, question mark. Italy's back four. On paper, I think there's definitely questions to be asked. France, not the greatest defensive unit. Germany, Netherlands without Van Dijk. You go through those big hitters, and England haven't conceded a goal. If they can remain watertight and that defence can continue to perform against the bigger opponents, then there's no reason why England can't go all the way through to the final, though I will probably play Harry Kane ahead of Dominic Calvert-Lewin. Sorry, Russ.
I think a lot of us would certainly play Harry Kane, but it's a fair point that Russ has made. Of course, Dominic Calvert-Lewin probably hasn't, he's been used at times in the tournament, but maybe to some people not been used quite enough. And some people will say that Harry Kane is out of form. And of course, we've gone through the big sides in this group, but we might as well talk about the other sides in there. Your Ukraine, your Austria, your Czech Republic. As I've mentioned, it's been done before. We've seen shock finalists, we've seen shock winners. Are we going to see any of those sort of crop of sides, your Wales, your Denmarks, Austria, Czech Republic, Ukraine, get to the last four? Even Switzerland, we've not even spoken about. And I mean, they've got some good attacking quality in there, Switzerland under Vladimir Petkovic. Does it feel like, Russ, that might just be a tournament like that where we saw Wales 5 years ago beat Belgium and then just completely, fall against Portugal? Does it feel like it's going to be like that? Or is it just going to be, 4 semi-finals where before the tournament you would have picked those 4 sides to be in it anyway?
I think it could be the latter of the question there,
Yeah.
Matt. I think it'll be the 4 that you'd expect to be in the semi-finals. I think if you look to overall, and I think Denmark will have too much for Wales, if I'm honest. So I think they could end up getting knocked out in the next round. I think Austria's going to get knocked out as well. I think Czech Republic may get knocked out too. I think it'll be Portugal which will get knocked out against Belgium. So Belgium will be going through. I think France will get through. I don't think Switzerland will get through. And I think Sweden will get through. But I'm still sticking to it. Belgium-England final, England to win it. And I'm going to go back to my point about England a minute. If you look at the last Euros where Portugal won it, they only scored 9 goals in the entire tournament all the way through, and didn't concede many in the knockout stage from the knockouts onwards. And if England, and I think everyone in this chat tonight, and probably those who support England at home, who are probably watching this and listening to this right now, if I say to you, England will win 1-0 in the next 4 games, so that's against Germany, Sweden or Ukraine, the semi-final and the final, and win the Euros, I think everyone in this room will take that. And if we win 1-0 between now and the end of the tournament, everyone will be happy. Yes, we may not play well and play defensive, and we may not play as attacking, we may play a bit too defensive at times against these bigger teams, try and soak up the pressure and try and hit them on the break, where we may use like the Grealish and Saka to get in behind quickly and get over the field a bit quicker. And I think if England win 1-0, if I said to you, England's going to win 1-0 in the rest of our games this tournament, I think everyone on this panel here right now, anyone can say you won't. I think everyone on this panel will be quite happy with that, and England to lift the trophy. You'll be seeing Harry Kane lifting that trophy when England win 1-0 in the final. I think we're going to win 1-0 between now and the end of the tournament. England, I don't think we're going to score more than 1, and it's been done before where Portugal didn't score more than 1 may have scored more than 1 in the semi-final, I think it was, but the rest of them, they only scored 1 goal in the last Euros, and they still won it, scoring 9 along the way. So could England do the same in this one? Score a few goals and win it? We'll have to wait to see, but I think they can.
I'm just going to we're going to wrap up very, very shortly, but sort of just echoing the point that Russ and Barry sort of made, Mike. I'm going to go to you first, and I'm going to go to you, John, and then I'll end it on Nicholas, of course. So it does kind of mean everyone has a real fair share in towards the latter stages of this podcast. But do you feel, Mike, that this tournament might be won on defensive football? I mean, Italy and England haven't conceded yet. Sweden are quite a defensive side. Portugal have been well known to be defensive. Does it almost have that feeling of doing that, this time round like it did 5 years ago?
I think it could well do, and I think that's where Harry Maguire coming back in could really be a big bonus for England. I thought he was fantastic the last game out. It was like he hadn't been away, to be honest. I thought that, yes, as you mentioned rightly earlier on in regards to Tyrone Mings as well, he didn't do anything wrong in the games that he played, but Harry Maguire was quite assured. He was quite, sort of just like he hadn't been away. It was a good partnership there with John Stones as well, and that might be what wins it, as you say, and in front of them as well. I think Jordan Henderson will probably play on Tuesday. As much as Calvin Phillips was fantastic in the opening game, and Declan Rice was up there as well. I just think that the fact Jordan Henderson come on last game and kind of had a bit of game time was down to the fact that Gareth Southgate really fancies him to probably play the full 90 minutes against Germany, and maybe offer something a little bit different in terms of the experience factor.
Yeah, absolutely. And John, I'm just going to kind of ask you a different question, but it's very relatable to what's sort of just been discussed. it almost does feel like, obviously we know how the Belgians play. We know how the Italians sort of play. We know what the French, as I sort of alluded to, are quite capable of themselves. Does it almost just feel like that the attacking players for all these better sides to the left in the tournament are going to be too strong for the defence? Or can defensive willpower and smartness get you a long way still in football, where it might have just been lost in elite football over the last sort of few years?
I think, like you said, I think it's Brian. It's intelligence that needs to play its role in the next coming games. And I agree with Russ and Barry. And as mentioned it early on as well, I think if we look at teams, every team they need a good solid defense. And then if you got two really, really good holding midfielders like England got at the moment, you can actually get a long way. And then it will actually give the chance to, for example, as far as England's concerned, to give the people around him, around Harry Kane, to give him more support and more ammunition, knowing that they don't have to worry about that defense behind them. Now, you look at France going forward, fantastic, but if all of a sudden an extra one or two commit themselves going forward, France actually probably going to concede a goal or two even. But funny you mentioned this. Actually, unfortunately, I'm old enough to remember the 1986 World Cup. And Denmark in their group, they were in the group of death. I don't know if Barry remembers. It was Denmark, Scotland, Uruguay, and West Germany at the time. And what happened then is Denmark beat Scotland 1-0. They beat West Germany 2-0, who were runners-up in that tournament. And they beat Uruguay 6-1. And straight away, everyone said, look at Denmark. They can actually go and do it. And what happened in the next round? Then they got thrashed 5-1 by Spain. So when you actually play attacking football, sometimes it doesn't always work in your favor. And you need to have that balance, and especially on that defense, and obviously a good goalkeeping, which I have to admit, I think when it comes to England, Jordan Pickford would not be my first choice, but it is what it is. And I have to go with Gareth Southgate goes along with, and in the day, he will take the consequences if it does not work out. But I do think that the defensive part of football is actually the way forward in this tournament.
I don't think he's put a foot wrong yet, though, Pickford, has he?
No, Pickford's been fantastic. He's been up there for one of the
two main challengers are both out injured. Pope and Henderson. So, the two backup, you wouldn't want to fire them in at a major tournament at the moment. You're kind of reliant on that. And everyone's reliant at the moment. One red card, one major injury could just change the whole complexion of the whole tournament, couldn't it? A key player gets sent off or a key player gets injured. And it only takes that one moment, just changes everything. For example, one of the central defenders for England, when they haven't got a lot of depth, gets injured, or Pickford gets injured. That could be, or red carded. That could be a big game changer for England or any other team in the tournament. So there's always going to be a curveball in there somewhere, a twist. But I totally agree with you there, John.
Yeah, it's very, very interesting that you do say that from John in particular, that maybe defensive football hasn't been lost. And Nicholas, just the last thing I'm going to say to you, I mean, obviously managers, when they do get it right, don't actually get a lot of credit when they do. I mean, I spoke about earlier how Portugal last night played Renato Sanchez, had a Fernandes. That was a stroke of genius from Fernando Santos. We've seen during, the Euros in the past that they've made changes, whether it's starting lineups or subs. They've worked a treat. Do you maybe think that, though, it might just come down to how a manager can make one decision in a game that could be decisive? Look at the Euro final 5 years ago. Eder comes on, never scored for his country, pops up with a big moment and, is in Portuguese folklore for the rest of his life. Do you feel as though that it might come down to a manager making one big, bold decision, whether it's England or whether it's Wales, potentially, that would not just take them a long way in the tournament, but win it? Do you think it's going to take a lot of guts and risk from the manager to say, I'm going to put this player in and he could, win it sort of not on his own, but that decision alone could change the complexion of the game in the tournament for us?
I reckon it could well do. I mean, managers making bold decisions like that, like you say, very underrated, very sort of underrated, I think you said, and sort of don't get enough praise. I think that's kind of unfair because they are the men behind the driving force of the players, and so if they make a crucial decision that could result in a team winning a particular match, or or indeed the tournament, to not get any credit for them, but to not get any credit for it, to me is kind of unfair. So I reckon big tactical managerial decisions could well come into it, besides players' agility.
Well, Barry said it earlier about throwing a curveball. It might come down to that rather than actual defensive football, or whether you play attacking football. That's all we have time for on the group
I've just
stage
got one
review.
quick question before we do wrap up.
Yeah, far away, carry on.
And it's regarding England and it's to the panel on here and to anyone who's still listening as well. After Maguire's performance the other day, and I thought he played fantastically well at centre back alongside John Stones, and there's talks that John Stones may be injured for this next
The Germany game on Tuesday might be out.
Might be out for the Germany game on Tuesday. I'm going to come to Barry first with this question. Would you play Maguire alongside Mings, knowing both players are strong on the left foot, or would you put someone else in alongside, say, Maguire with that experience, to have an experience, say, alongside someone, say, like a Ben White, who's good on the right-hand side of the defence, Barry? Who would you?
Like he's on his way to Arsenal as well, doesn't he? Ben
It does,
White,
yeah. It looks like,
and you know, he might well change it completely and go 3 central defenders and 2 wing backs. You know, that's another option that he has gone down that road before, and that wouldn't be totally uncommon. I think he can play with those two. I think have 2 left-sided players. One could go across to the right. He's got to play the best 2 central defenders that he's got, and they're probably Mings and Maguire if Stones isn't fit. But Stones might be mind games. He might be fit. You just don't know. We'll wait and see. But you know, either way, I don't think that's going to be the major loss for England, because I think they've got good cover. You know, I think if there are other players in that team, if they were out Rice, for example, or Kane, I think that would be a bigger loss for them. But I think they've got good cover, England, in so many apart from goalkeeper. You know, I'm a bit worried about the goalkeeping department. But across the field, you can go around that field. You know, and maybe that's, you know, Harry Kane for me up front. There's not a lot of depth there, but there's still 2 good strikers in Rashford and Calvert-Lewin that can come in and do a job if need be. But there's a good depth in that squad. And again, coming back to, you know, we're talking about curveballs that might change it. Depth of squad and substitutions are also going to play a massive role in the whole tournament. But yeah,
and just going on to that, just as well with Raheem Sterling. Of course, Raheem Sterling can play through the middle as well. If they want to, you know, if Gareth Southgate wants to maybe play
centre back.
No, because you were talking about the strikers as well. So Raheem Sterling can play through the middle, and maybe then he can play a Sancho or a, you know, when Sancho and a Saka off of him or something like that. I don't know, or Grealish in there, or Foden, whoever, Mason Mount.
Yep. Great options. You can't play them all, though, can you? It's like he's going to come under scrutiny. I gave him a bit of stick on the commentary the other night when he didn't bring on Sancho until the 82nd, 83rd minute, whatever it was. You know, I'd like to see a little bit more of Jadon Sancho, but you'd like to see a little bit more of all of those players. You can't play them all. You can't play 7 attackers at this level of the game. It's just impossible. It's great that he's got those players in abundance. So, you know, if a Jack Grealish was suspended in the final, you know, you've got a Foden or you've got a Sancho, you've got that little intertwining quartet that you can't play them all, but there's so much depth there, and that depth could ultimately carry them through. I think England have got a chance. I'm not getting carried away, but I think they've got a chance based on what I've seen from everybody else. I think they've got a good squad. I think they've got it sorted out as good as they can so far defensively. We'll probably be looking back at this show in a couple of weeks' time, cringing at what we're saying tonight. But
probably next Wednesday when we got beat 3-0 by Germany.
Well, yeah, don't rule it out. Don't think you're going to have an easy game against the Germans. I think we've got what it takes to beat the Germans, but the Germans have got what it takes to manage that level of game, and it's up there in the stratosphere, and they know how to manage a knockout tournament so well. They've done it for years. It's in their DNA. It's a very, very tough game, and England need to be at their best if they're going to beat the Germans.
Indeed, yes. And Matt, I'm going to come to you on the question I asked Barry. Would you play the back 3, or would you go with someone say like a Ben White and a Harry Maguire, or would you put Mings and Maguire and move send Mings to the right centre back if John Stones is unfit?
It's an excellent question. What I would personally do, I think I would probably play the three. I think to match what Germany are playing. I think Southgate will do that. I think he does have a tendency when we play the bigger sides to do that, match up in a sort of formation that's very similar to the opposition. I think Germany at times have made it work and at times they haven't. I think against Portugal, as I mentioned earlier, Kimmich and Gosens was so good at it where they just went right beyond the fullbacks who played narrow. I think when you play wing backs, England have seen it in particular. Reece James plays very, very wide in terms of closing the ball down and stopping sort of attacking players that come against him very, very well. I mean, Mike and John did the Champions League final, and one thing I noticed was Raheem Sterling always plays very, very wide and comes in the middle. Reece James just didn't give him any room, any time to sort of try and get round him, whether it was on the outside or in the middle. And I think, he would be a choice to go in there. I wouldn't play Ben White in a back three. I know he's very comfortable there for Brighton, given they've played it all season, but I think you need a bit of balance. And I think because Tyrone Mings is left-footed, and I think, you've got Maguire playing the centre, you've got John Stones, and obviously you'd almost do what the Sheffield United model was under Chris Wilder, where you'd allow sort of John Stones to just sort of roam into the midfield, probably slightly better than probably what the other three could do. And I'm not saying Ben White's ability is, not great, because it is, because I do think he's a really good, talented player. But I think it's a real shock to throw someone in on their first cap against Germany, a massive game. And, it could be one of those where if it all does go wrong for him, he might not ever play for England again. It might just be one of those. So you've got to kind of think smart. You've got to think tactical. And I don't think Southgate would do that. And in terms of the left-back position, if you play wing-backs, you have to go Shaw, because I think he's able to get up and down the pitch a little bit more. Trippier, I'm not too sure is capable of doing that. I think in a 4, you could be defensive and just stay back. But in a 5, you need to be very dynamic. You need to be up and down the pitch, because that is the outlet, isn't it, in terms of getting the balls into the box and, being the creative. So I think that's what I would personally do. But obviously, we just don't know what Southgate's going to throw at us.
That's true, Matt. And Mark, I'm going to come to you now. And you mentioned about the wing backs there. Obviously, I'd probably play Shaw on the left hand side, because he has played that quite a number of times for England and
Man U as well. Yeah,
Man United as well. On the right though, because obviously he'll put Kyle Walker one of the centre back options if he does that.
Mm-hmm.
That's why he normally does in a back three.
Yeah.
Who would you play on the right side then, man? Would it be Kieran Trippier, who has played mainly left back when he has played, or would you put Reece James in that role, and why would you pick
Reece James
player?
for me, 100%. Matt mentioned it there that me and John covered the Champions League final between Chelsea and Man City, and he was exceptional. Fantastic, performance from Reece James on that day. He's got it going forward. He can defend. He's got everything about him as Reece James, and I think that's what we need. And if that's the kind of performance that he can put in on a big stage, and he can do that against Manchester City, I'm sure Germany wouldn't faze him either.
Yes, and I'll come to you now, Jack, with the similar sort of question which I've asked the others as well. Obviously, Mike mentioned there on about Conor Cody. Is he fit enough to be involved for England? We've not seen Conor Cody yet in this tournament. If he were to go to a back three, which he may do, and he's got Walker on the right, I'd probably say on the left, probably Maguire. So in the middle, if Stones is not fit, would you go with Mings or Cody or White for you, and why?
I don't really rate any of them, to be honest. I rate White more. He's young. He's definitely got the potential. I mean, he's about good at Arsenal now, so he's going to start getting that big club mentality.
Behave yourself, Jack.
So he is gonna. So for me, if Stones is injured, I think that's a big problem for England actually, because I don't rate Tyrone Mings, to be honest. I think the only reason he's really in the team is because he's left-footed. and he sort of shouts a lot. That's just my opinion. But yeah, so Mings, I feel like is a bomb scare. He's got an awful mistake in him. Cody had an average season for Wolves, really. He has been good for Wolves, but he wasn't great. I think he really struggled when they started playing in a 2, bit better when they went back to a back 3. So just by process of elimination, it'd have to be Ben White for me, with Kyle Walker right centre back, and then James right wing back, Luke Shaw left wing back. But you've just got to, honestly, he's got to pray John Stones is fit, because Stones and Maguire is the first choice partnership. And I disagree slightly with Barry. I feel that if Stones is missing, England are in a bit of trouble.
I think you're right as well in regards to John Stones.
Yeah.
You know, that last game, I thought him and Maguire had a really good partnership between them. And I think if that can continue into the Germany game, then they've got that to kind of take forward. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yes, and one final one before I do hand back to Matt to wrap up the show today, and it's been a great show. I'll come to you, John, on this, and then if you've got anything to add, Nicholas, after what you've heard from the others, then you can jump in at the end. But John, for you, left wing, obviously we know Mason Mount is not going to be available, obviously, because he comes out to quarantine the day before this match, and he'll obviously have not trained with the squad prior to this game against Germany. Would you start Jack Grealish again against Germany, given how he caused in the first half, especially problems to the Czech Republic, or would you be happy, or would you put somebody else in that position, say someone like a Jude Bellingham, who came on and played that role towards the end of the match against the Czech Republic?
Good question. I think I'll start with Jack Grealish, based on the fact that we need a bit of creativity trying to beat that German efficiency that I spoke about earlier. And to have someone with the ability of Jack that he showed over the last year or two, it's definitely well needed for the England team if, like you said, Mason Mount won't be able to play in this game.
Yes, and Nicholas, I'll just come to you quickly because it's about England. You've obviously watched England games so far. Foden, sometimes for Man City, plays in that number 10 where Mount been playing for England and Foden's been playing out wide. If Foden, obviously Foden was rested in the last game, if you just fetch Foden back in, do you think he'll play him in the number 10 and leave Grealish out? Or do you think he'll take out, say, Sterling and leave Grealish in the side for you, Nicholas? Do you think Grealish will start against Germany?
I reckon he should, because Sterling's proved what he's worth throughout the first few games of England's campaign. So I think Southgate might need to rest him for a bit. So definitely start. So definitely start with Grealish. Foden needs to up his game a bit more. So I think Southgate should start him too.
Yes, and that's just my point which I wanted to make about England there, Matt. So I'll throw it back to you to
Saka,
wrap up
for
the
me,
show.
just quickly, Saka's got to start as well. I think Saka was instrumental against Czech Republic on, was it Tuesday night, wasn't it? And, you know, I think him and Grealish, they really put on good shows between the pair of them. So I think that, knowing Gareth Southgate, he'll probably drop the pair of them now, but I think it'd be criminal if he did.
If they won, Mike, you'd forgive him.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm an England fan at the end of the day, so yeah.
Yeah, thank you for that little bit there, Russ Vernon. Of course, we were just talking through what the lineup would potentially be against England, who we would play, who we wouldn't play. We're thinking ahead to that game on Tuesday. Boy, I can't wait. And I know that Barry, I know that Russ, I know that Mike, I know that John, and I know that Nicholas, I know that Jack cannot wait for it either. That's going to wrap it up now for the group stage review knockout preview show here on the Commentary Hub. Thank you for all your comments. Of course, we didn't get to read some of them out, but of course, the ones we did get to read out, we are grateful. Remember on YouTube to like and subscribe to the Commentary Hub 2 channel. channel and the Commentary Hub. Remember to follow Ross Vernon's Twitch, give a like and subscribe to Mike Harneman's YouTube. Remember to follow us on our Twitter page at Commentary Live 1. It's the Commentary Hub's official Twitter account where all our streams go. So just to recap the round of 16 games, Nicholas Jones brings you Wales versus Denmark, 5 p.m. on Saturday. John Stuttard brings you Italy versus Austria, the Netherlands, Czech Republic. We could be either John or it could be Luke. We still are yet to determine that. Of course, they've got to fight it out amongst themselves, not quite literally, but still. I'll be covering the Belgium versus Portugal match on Sunday night in Seville. Croatia versus Spain. Mike Harneman brings you the game from the Telia Park in Copenhagen. Jack Cunningham is watching France versus Switzerland. England versus Germany. John Kane in the top right corner is bringing you coverage of that. And Russ Vernon brings the game last of the 8, and that is Sweden versus Ukraine. Thank you to all the pundits and the guests who've taken part, of course. Jack Cunningham down below me, Nicholas to my right, Barry to my left, Russ in the top left corner, Mike just above me, and John Kane in the right-hand corner. Of course, thank you to John Stuttard and to Luke Turton, of course, who had to depart very early on into the stream. So the group stages are done. 8 we've said goodbye to. 16 are left, and this is where the tournament really starts to flicker into life. We'll be back for our coverage on Saturday. Do tune in for that. But for everybody from the Commentary Hub, enjoy the rest of your evening and your Friday night, and we'll see you again on Saturday for Wales versus Denmark. Bye for now.